Sir,
and gets on with the important business.
Until she's finished speaking. Go ahead, Chief Whip.
This will then be followed by the financial resolutions to underpin the significant package of supports announced by Government on Sunday, and that these important reliefs are implemented immediately. Ceann Comhairle, the order of business stands.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Deputy, I'm going to ask you. Deputy, excuse me. Deputy, I'm going to ask you. I'm standing. Resume your seat. Deputy, resume your seat. Well, then I put the question. The procedure carries on. If the deputy can't resume his seat and respect the chair, we move the proceedings. And I'm putting the question. Are the proposed arrangements for the week's business agreed to? Not agreed. Deputies in favour say tall. Deputies against say kneel. The question is carried. Vote all. order of business, and the question is that the proposed arrangements for the week's business be agreed to, and on that question the division has been challenged. Tellers Thaw, Deputy Mary Butler and Emer Curry, Tellers Neil, Porrig McLaughlin and Duncan Smith. Result: Deputies Thaw 93, Deputies Neil 74. Sheelam Gowill on Kesh Richa. And before I proceed, this is a very important debate for the public looking in at proceedings today. And I will briefly outline how this debate will proceed for their benefit. Speaking times have been agreed by the House and are displayed on the clock. If the clock turns red, a member's time is up. When a member rises, their time begins. Where time is shared, the chair will indicate it. All contributions must be addressed through the chair. These arrangements are governed by the rules of the House, and as Ceann Comhairle, I am obliged to implement them. Equally, all members are obliged to comply with these rules, and I would ask that you do so. Every member speaking is entitled to fair hearing. Our constituents expect this debate will be conducted in a respectful manner, and I ask that all members cooperate. I now move to the motion, re-confidence in the government, and I call on the Taoiseach to move the motion. Taoiseach, you will be sharing time with the Tánaiste and the Minister of State, Sean Canny. Taoiseach, please move the motion.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle, and I formally move the motion of confidence in the government. And I welcome this debate at Ceann Comhairle and the opportunity to again discuss important issues facing our people. Each of us here has a mandate and a duty to show respect for others and to conduct a debate which shows respect for the people by acknowledging the full range of concerns at this deeply challenging moment in history. We need to talk about the huge impact of rising oil prices, but also the wider context of protecting jobs, funding services, investing to get costs down, and getting Ireland through a period of international turmoil. Wars and a pandemic has led to sustained pressure on costs faced by families and businesses for nearly 5 years. Government has had to act on a wide range of fronts, including securing basic supplies. There are structural issues which have to be addressed. I will be happy to return to the Dáil to discuss our investment plans for permanently reducing the upward pressure on key costs, and especially energy costs. I welcome an honest debate about getting electricity prices permanently down in international terms. The House will note the report this morning, which says explicitly that since 2022, government measures have shielded consumers considerably, unquote. However, for today, I will focus on the immediate issue of recent major increases in costs arising from rising oil prices. The opposition claims that nothing has been done to help people, that other countries are helping more, and that the government could easily sort out everything. This is, of course, manifestly untrue and directly ignores the fact that we are implementing significant action, that this goes beyond anything being done elsewhere, and that the core concern pushing up oil prices is an international conflict, war in the Middle East between the US, Israel and Iran. From the first days of this latest conflict, we have been directly taking action to reduce the impact on Ireland and have held ongoing discussions with representatives of the full range of groups impacted. The first intervention which we implemented last month helped through cutting duties, benefiting everyone, and also directly helping families, and it amounted to €250 million. The latest measures go further and are based on detailed discussions with different sectors about their specific needs, and they're designed to very directly help protect jobs and keep costs down. At €500 million, it is a comprehensive package. It's not about helping special interest groups. We all depend on transport, food production, haulage, fisheries and other fuel-intensive industries. And that is why we are implementing specific measures tailored to these critical areas. These reflect the ongoing open and constructive discussions and information we have had with representative bodies. I'm not going to attempt to address all of the false claims by opposition deputies, but I will reply to a clearly untrue statement by Deputy Carty. He claimed the Irish government is the biggest profiteer, his words, on oil prices, and that budget coffers were being swelled. The Deputy is intelligent enough and has enough access to research to know that this is flat out untrue. As the publicly available facts show, the government is already spending dramatically more on measures to help people with fuel costs than it is receiving in extra taxes. Before today, the measures provided by government was costing close to €28 million a week, while the additional revenue has averaged €4 million. Our actions also amount to proportionately the largest assistance package of any European country. The closest any country comes is Spain, where the support package is over a quarter smaller. The packages in Germany and Poland are roughly 90% lower than the supports we are implementing. As for Northern Ireland, the actions taken by the Executive and the British Government combined are a fraction of what we are implementing. The basic core claim that we are doing nothing and are falling behind other countries is simply untrue. One thing the opposition never does is respect the fact that we have to fund social services and investments. We have to secure basic energy and food supplies and keep open trade and exports which are responsible for 90% of what we produce in any one year. We have to protect our ability to overcome new shocks which may arise. The measures we are implementing involve a very significant amount of public resources and directly support those being hit by the shock of increasing world fuel prices. They go further than other governments and they combine both general and targeted assistance. As I have said, I'm happy to return to the House to discuss prices in general and action on affordability. A combination of immediate and long-term actions is required, but any politician here who pretends that there are no hard choices to be made is being dishonest, and they know it. What the people have a right to is sustainable supports combined with sustained action to tackle the structural drivers of rising costs. And this has to be the focus. Today, it is important, of course, to address events of the last week. Our action and our engagement on fuel prices was ongoing before the blockade, and it will continue well after the blockade. This is a country which ranks in the top 10 in the world for freedom of speech, the right to protest, and the right of democratic participation. Every week, the streets outside of Leinster House are filled with groups passionately advocating for their cause. People speak up looking for funding for local services, for special education supports, for childcare, for disability services, for pensions, and also for many other political, environmental and social issues. These demonstrations often involve closing roads in coordination with An Garda Síochána. The general public and businesses accept the inconvenience as part of what comes with living in an active democracy. The blockade of critical infrastructure of last week went far beyond this. It was a destructive blockade which threatened to cause much deeper damage. Everybody has a right to protest, but nobody has a right to appoint themselves as the voice of the people and to threaten the jobs and livelihoods of many thousands of families. Nobody has the right to prevent people from getting the cancer treatment, to be visited by their carer, to distribute vital supplies. The House needs to face up to the fact that these actions were very directly threatening the basic fuel supplies of the country. This went far beyond the drying up of fuel pumps which people saw throughout the country. We were informed in government that our only refinery was in danger of being closed and that export-dependent companies were about to start sending workers home. The ports and refinery blockade meant that at the very time when global supplies are scarce, oil intended for Ireland was about to be diverted elsewhere. I absolutely understand the pressures people feel and the need for measures to reduce the impact of rising oil prices. That said, no group has the right to say to the rest of the country that it will decide who gets fuel to go to work, that it decides who gets fuel in general, or it decides who will block, or that it decides that it will block Irish firms from exporting the goods which pay workers' wages. No action by government was taken in haste. Time was given for people to make their point, but action was required and it was taken. The Gardaí acted with the utmost professionalism under often extreme pressure, and with the specialist support of the Army, lifted the blockades. I want to again thank them for their work, and I would also like to thank the officials and ministers in various departments who worked tirelessly to make sure that essential services, particularly health services, remained available in the face of extreme challenges. There is another deeply important point arising from recent weeks concerning the nature of political behaviour in our country. There are many extreme groups which claim to speak on behalf of the people without ever securing the support of the people. It is standard practice for people to shout in the streets and online that they are the real people of Ireland and that the Dáil and the government are an unrepresentative elite who know nothing and care less about this country. Parliamentary democracy is something we should all affirm and defend. The great majority of people who have protested have done so reasonably and democratically. We all saw that this was not the case for some other elements. And everyone here should understand that you can't share platforms with them, express your support for them, call them the voice of the people, and then deny your responsibility for legitimising them. I condemn utterly the sinister targeting of Gardaí, of oil lorry drivers, and I've told the Commissioner that we will fully support his efforts to find and prosecute those involved. I also condemn the direct and indirect threats to deputies and to ministers. The online threats against homes and offices should be condemned by everyone here. We should all be concerned with the attempts to import extreme ideologies here, something we saw with the number of online social media accounts originating from America, Britain and elsewhere, which were spreading inflammatory comments about the blockade. In reality, we are in a period of dramatically escalating angry rhetoric in politics, and the escalating rhetoric of opposition here too is unprecedented. I would say finally that the government has a clear democratic mandate. We have an ambitious programme for investment and services support in people and protecting our country.
Thank you.
And on this issue, and on the fundamental challenge of getting our country through a period of deep and rapidly evolving international challenges, as Taoiseach and as a government, we are clear-sighted, resolute and determined to do what we need to do to protect and defend our social and economic progress.
Tánaiste, please.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. I join with the Taoiseach in moving this motion of confidence in the government. This government came together to form a stable majority with a clear mission to work hard to build a secure and prosperous future for the people of this country across 5 budgets. We're guided by that mission today as much as we were on the day we took office. Let me be direct about what's actually happening here. Sinn Féin decided to table a no-confidence motion before they even saw the details of the government's package of supports. A package of supports which factually is far more comprehensive and strategically responsive than anything they have proposed or anything they're working on in the Northern Ireland Executive. Were their motion to tear down this government successful, the financial resolutions which we will pass in this House later this evening would fall away. And the measures we have agreed on behalf of the Irish people over the weekend to try and help hard-pressed people would not take effect, the very same hard-pressed people they purport to represent. In other words, this no-confidence motion is just another one of their stunts, and in the cold light of day, people know that. Ceann Comhairle, we're in a position to take this additional set of measures because of our budgetary strategy and because of the position of the public finances. It has enabled us to do many things which are helping people in the here and now, and things which are in place for the long term. 1 million children getting free school books, hot school meals in our primary schools, fuel allowance worth over €1,000 per winter, with 1 in 4 households now qualifying, including those on working family payments. VAT on gas and electricity cut to 9%. 300,000 people accessing free HRT. Increased weekly payments to pensioners, carers, people with disabilities. The minimum wage up 40% since 2020 to make sure work pays. Back to school allowance expanded to preschool children. The largest ever increase in child support payments. More than 55,000 families with children in 3rd level paying no contribution fee at all, and that number growing. Auto-enrolment introduced, supporting 763,000 workers build retirement security. And for the first time, public investment in a public model of childcare to build and overhaul our childcare systems. Ceann Comhairle, when the noise stops, the energy price shock does also highlight the importance of reducing our dependence on imported fossil fuels and accelerating the climate transition. As long as we remain in this country dependent on fossil fuels from imports, we risk our economic security and well-being. We're implementing the largest infrastructure programme in the history of the state, and capital investment is projected to exceed €200 billion over the next decade. And thankfully, we're seeing clear progress now, with almost half, 49% of the country's electricity generated from renewables in March. 58,000 homes retrofitted last year. And recent changes we've made to state schemes have seen a strong surge in applications, of course, being funded by carbon tax, which some in this House seek to abolish. We're seeing record demand, over 29,000 applications already this year across SEAI schemes, because government has made it more attractive and more financially possible than ever before for households to upgrade their homes. We're seeing applications for heat pumps surge by 95%, roof insulation by 81%, and cavity wall insulation by 62%. We're accelerating delivery, particularly for those most in need, while continuing to support tens of thousands of Irish homeowners with upgrades. We're also delivering at scale for the most vulnerable, with over 8,100 homes completed last year under the Warmer Homes Scheme, the highest number ever. There's always more to do, Ceann Comhairle, and challenges will always come. But in a time of enormous and rapid change, the one constant has been a government working to secure the well-being of the Irish people. We did it through the COVID-19 pandemic. We did it together through the war in Ukraine. We've done it together through the cost of living crisis. We've done it through the tariff-induced uncertainty, and we will respond and work together again while others seek to just tear it down. We've provided financial and other supports to households and businesses in a range of ways. We've deployed the state's balance sheet to maintain jobs, livelihoods and incomes. Each challenge that the world has thrown at us, Cian Corla, we have emerged stronger from despite it. The strength of the Irish economy is clearly evident in our labour market. Unemployment has remained below 5% for 16 consecutive quarters. This is a remarkable achievement given the global headwinds. That means that over 450,000 more people are now in employment than just before the pandemic. Around 57,000 of those jobs were added in the past 12 months alone. Over 200 jobs every working day. The strength of our labour market mirrors developments across the wider economy. Business investment up, consumer spending resilient, signs of continued confidence in our economy amongst firms and households despite a more uncertain backdrop. And as well as stewarding the economy through the challenges of recent years, our public finances are in good shape. The choices that matter most often get the least attention. In 2012, Ireland's public debt stood at 163% of national income. Today it stands at 62%. That reduction did not happen by accident. It happened because successive governments, including this one, have run structural primary surpluses, have treated windfall corporate tax receipts as temporary rather than permanent revenue, and have made deliberate decisions to sterilise those receipts into long-term saving funds. Our positive fiscal position has given us the ability to respond to the energy price shock. And other countries and other executives, including in Northern Ireland, have not been in a position to respond similarly. We benefit from having acted to address the structural challenges that lay on the horizon. To enhance our economic resilience, we've established two long-term saving funds, the Future Ireland Fund and the Infrastructure and Climate and Nature Fund. Cian Corla, we now have the fiscal power to respond to external shocks. That wasn't always guaranteed. The external environment that we face is clouded in considerable uncertainty. Whatever the developments in the Middle East over the coming days, the economic fallout of the conflict is likely to persist, given the lasting and real damage to energy infrastructure. As a result, the supply-demand imbalance in energy markets is likely to continue for some time. Although we cannot, of course, know the scale of the imbalance, it will depend on an array of factors. Ireland, as a small, open economy, will always feel these global shocks, but we are better prepared than we have been in the past. We entered 2026 from a position of relative economic strength. We expect the Irish economy to continue to grow, albeit at a slower pace than previously envisaged, and my department will shortly publish its updated economic assessment. At moments like this, it's always been abundantly clear that we have an opposition which has no shortage of spending plans, but no strategy for growth. No thought is ever given to how they'd fund their endless commitments. For a week, the airwaves were filled by those who shout the loudest and command the most attention online. In an age shaped by social media algorithms, in an age shaped by social media algorithms and 24-hour news cycles, it's easy to mistake that volume for consensus. People face real pressures, but no one in this republic gets to restrict the right of anyone else to move or go about their business. Beneath the noise, we had the cancer patient who couldn't get to their chemo. We had the expectant mother who didn't get to their checkup. We had the man who didn't get to his dialysis appointment.
Save it for
we
your
had the worker who lost a day's pay because they couldn't get to their job. We had a parent stuck in traffic with screaming kids. We had the business owner who couldn't open because of a lack of stock. And while we mightn't have heard from these people much, we know too that they're feeling the pressure. These are people who feel the pressure every day. They get up in the morning, they go to work, and they try to get on with it. There are genuine, hard-working people concerned. People who join the protest too because they're feeling the pinch. Decent people who need our help and need our assistance. They will remain our focus. They'll remain our focus every day, including in our resolutions tonight. That's what fairness looks
Civility
like.
is
It's what a
not
strong
weakness,
economy can
but it
deliver.
is manners.
Real outcomes, a good
Kim.
job and security for you and your family. This government has acted. It's acted decisively. It's using its economic strength wisely. Together we will get through this challenge, but we won't get through it by seeking to sow division and tear our country apart.
Deputy Sean Canny, Minister of State Sean Canny, Deputy's respectful
Thank you, Cancora.
discourse.
Over the past number of weeks, there has been fear and uncertainty caused by the war in the Middle East. I understand why people are worried and the pressures they are facing. The huge volatile situation is ever evolving and has meant there is a lack of certainty for people that is causing worry and distress. This government has been working hard to ensure that supports are put in place to ease that burden on people. As soon as the conflict in Iran began, we stepped up the engagement with stakeholders across all sectors. Engagement is key to developing any support, hearing from the official representatives of stakeholders and organisations so we can put supports in place that are driven by evidence and help where they are needed most. We announced an initial package in March which totaled 250 million. As independents in government, we have constructively been involved in the process from the beginning. Within my own department, Minister Darragh O'Brien and I have been engaging with all stakeholders in the logistics and supply chain area, which are impacted severely by this fuel crisis. We have been doing that on a regular basis since the war began. We made it clear at the time that what we initially announced would be under constant review and we would step up with additional support if and when it was needed. Engagement and dialogue continues with stakeholders and representative groups, and to ensure that any additional measures needed to be put in place would benefit these key sectors within the economy, such as transport, logistics, school transport operators and more. Within agriculture, Minister Michael Healy-Rae, Minister Noel Grealish, along with the colleagues Minister Martin Hayden and Minister Timmy Dooley, have been engaging with various farming organisations to see where this help is most needed. A further package of measures were confirmed on Sunday night following engagement across key sectors, which has been outlined already. An extensive increase in reduction in excise duties until the 31st of July, a further reduction in 10 cents in the price of diesel, bringing the total reduction to 32 cents per litre, a further reduction of 10 cents in the price of petrol, bringing the total reduction to 27 cents per litre, a reduction of 2.4 in the marked gas oil, green diesel, a comprehensive new 100 million fuel subsidy support scheme to assist farmers, agricultural contractors and fisheries across unprecedented increase in fuel has also been confirmed. The transport support scheme which we have put in place amounts to 120 million. I think it's important to say that these combined package has brought the total support to 775 million, the highest package in the EU per capita of population. As independents, we entered government to effect change. We made the decision to enter government so that we could be centrally making key decisions to help our economy and to help our citizens. The war in Iran is affecting every single citizen in this country. The state can't handle every single element of this pressure, but we have worked collectively and in partnership with other government parties to introduce key supports to ease the burden. Over the past week, we have seen some members of the opposition actively encourage obstruction, which is not acceptable. Key infrastructure was placed under threat. This does not help anybody. We need to work together in these unprecedented times. And I'd also ask the opposition to reflect on what they're trying to do today. If the opposition succeed in their aim to put this government out of business, those 775 million of supports will be not in place for the people of Ireland. And the issues will become immensely...
Deputy, you will have your opportunity.
And the issues will become more immensely difficult for everybody. I think it's time to show leadership, and it's time to show that we have the courage to put measures in place. Thank you very much, Cancora.
Please allow. You're finished, Minister. Thank you. I now call on Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald. No, you will not. Please respect the discourse. Deputy MacDonald. Deputies, just have civility is not a weakness on anybody's behalf, but it is good manners on everybody's. Deputy MacDonald, please.
Ceann Comhairle Siobhan agus Baran scale and will winning winching a tira tilche ag an realtas seo. Taréis miana the custas ag ordu navor the ainov erna falorov Bushade a reg Ibriha Chowley Kuramori Augustini Limi Hummus Isler Knock Will. Rinna an realtas an Gerkim Shunis Miasa. Tokhaid on Marak Toleg Titum Todini Fui Vru Ulwar to an realtas Shaw eg tep Neil Winyin Nadala Shaw Tilcha Aku. Today, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Independents ask us to vote confidence in their government, in their judgment, in their competence, in their ability to protect people in a crisis. It is a very brazen ask from people who have abandoned the Irish people, from those who have stood idly by while workers, families, communities and key sectors, the backbone of the Irish economy, struggled and struggled hard. A government that tried to shortchange people with half measures, one that sent the Dáil home for 20 days in the middle of this crisis, and that refused and refuses to listen. A government that at every turn acted only to inflame an already desperate situation. Yes, there is global instability. The illegal war by the United States and Israel against Iran has driven oil prices upwards, and that war must end. But it is your own arrogance, your lack of judgment, your lack of any empathy that has left people with no conclusion other than this: your time is up. And let's be honest, all of this didn't start last week. The seeds were sown in your budget in October, a budget of €9.4 billion that still managed to leave people worse off. A budget where you claimed that the cost of living crisis had passed. A budget where you turned your back on reality. A budget that looked after developers, corporate landlords and the banks, but left workers, carers, people with disabilities and families behind. You pretended that everything was fine, while people knew it was anything but that. And since then, things have only gotten worse. People feel it every single day. They live it in the supermarket, at the petrol pumps, when the bills land on the kitchen table, as workers head out the door in the morning wondering how they'll afford to fill their car, as families ration heat, deciding which rooms they can afford to warm, as carers and people with disabilities face the choice of heating or eating. That's their lived reality. And what do you do as this pressure built? Well, you sent out bills to parents to increase school transport fees. You reintroduced exam fees for Leaving Cert and Junior Cert students. And prices continued to rise. And the warnings came to you. You were told, and you ignored every last one of us. Your half measures 3 weeks ago only tinkered at the edges. A modest cut in excise, wiped out almost immediately. Absolutely no action on home heating oil. No meaningful support for workers. And we told you clearly that your half measures wouldn't cut it. And remember, we also provided you with an alternative that would have made fuel affordable and that would have supported people, but you walked away. You sent the Dáil home for 20 days. 20 days while people struggled, 20 days while costs surged, 20 days while families were left to cope alone. And Taoiseach, I wrote to you and I asked you to convene the Dáil immediately, and you ignored me. You ignored me because you are completely out of touch. That's the truth. And people have had enough, because workers across the state know exactly what's happened here. They know that they are paying more and getting less. They know that life has become unaffordable. They know that Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the independents are not on their side. And now people are demanding real measures. And yes, it has been the farmers, the agricultural contractors, the hauliers, the bus companies and others who have led the charge. But people everywhere now are calling for real action. They're calling for real leadership, and you don't provide that. On the contrary, your attitude over the past week was the arrogance of this government writ large, and your message to the ordinary people that you sneered at was like it or lump it. You demeaned peaceful protesters. You insulted them, and you insult them here again today. You refused to meet them because you decided that it was beneath you, it seems. Beneath you. As if your government has any great lofty standard about who you will sit down with. Give me a break.
Whether you like what
We only have to look to your grubby deal with Deputy Michael Lowry to see how very far from the truth that is. You see, you'll do deals when it suits you with anyone. You'll negotiate when it suits you. But when ordinary, decent people raised their voice, you turned your back. And incredibly, you then escalated the situation through your rhetoric, through your refusal to engage, and then you threatened people, including talk of sending in the army. That is not leadership. And even after all of that, the pressure, the protests, you come back with more half measures, not the comprehensive package that you brag of today. A small cut in excise, which doesn't make fuel affordable, a delay only in the carbon tax increase, not meeting the scale of this crisis.
listen to your own
A cut that will be gone with the next price spike, no removal of excise or carbon tax still on home heating oil, no real relief for households. And you completely ignore carers, people with disabilities, for whom fuel is essential. It's not a discretionary spend. So today, as you backslap, as you congratulate and flatter each other, just know that beyond your bubble, people see a government that's out of touch, refusing to listen or act in their interests, unable to understand their lives, and they have had enough. Trust between Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the independents and the people is shattered. Big promises made at the general election, broken one after the other. You promised income tax cuts every year. You broke that promise in your first budget. Not one red cent for working people, developers, landlords and banks looked after, though. You promised affordable childcare. Where is it? Parents are still waiting. You promised to abolish student fees and then you increased them. You promised to abolish the means test for carers, but at your pace that'll take decades. You promised cheaper energy. Bills have gone up and you took away the energy credits. You promised support for renters and then you changed the law. Threw renters to the wolves with the potential massive hikes for new tenancies. And then that promise, Tánaiste, to Simon Harris, that promise that no child would make more than 4 months for spinal surgery, broken again and again and again. The hallmarks of a government with no vision, no direction, no leadership, at a time when our country desperately needs all of those things. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and your independent backers, your time is up. And now listen to the voices of those decent working people who are out on the streets peacefully demonstrating and calling you out. And by God, you don't like the people calling you out, do you? They were telling you that they have had enough. And now today we, on their behalf, reiterate that stance and tell you that it is time now for an election. Let the people have their say, because your government no longer commands the confidence of the Dáil or of the Irish people, and it is your time to go.
Deputy Pearse Doherty.
Níl an rialta seo I géisteart le gré muintir na tíre seo, agus níl siad sésta an gríomh a dhéanú le céine dhearú ar brasla sa dóis go mó se ag price réasanta. I gantar tuaithe na héireann seo fud fad na tíre, tá ibranaí, tá teaghlaí, tá fermarí, tá cóirtaí buga faoi brú allmhór, gan ré bí acu ag price na airde a ic. Agus nuair a lór daoine má nar a lacseteach na stréide, thar an rialta seo a gais a dheiciú, agus wagar arthú in éit éisteart lá. Fiúnis, tá na barta atá se betóirt an tasaí a bhád rá lag. Is rialta seo at a chipia, agus níl muinning na gréadaoine na tíre seo in a caithí sibh immert. A government that doesn't listen doesn't have the confidence of ordinary people. And by God, this is a government that doesn't listen. Can Corleay lost count, but maybe you might inform us, how many pats in the back did the Tánaiste give themselves earlier on? Telling you, I've never heard such an out-of-touch speech in this Dáil ever. Because this is a government that still refuses to make fuel prices affordable at the pumps. Because if you were listening, Tánaiste, if you were listening, you would know that the cost of living crisis is crushing ordinary people. Fuel prices have surged. Still more than half what people pay at the pumps is taken away in taxes. And week after week, prices rose and pressure mounted. And what did Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Independents do? Nothing of substance. No urgency, no real intervention, no leadership. You stood back while people were being pushed to the brink. Your first response was an insult and any benefit that was wiped out almost immediately. No action on home heating oil, no meaningful support for households or rural communities. And it didn't come close to addressing the problem. And then what happened? You walked away. You refused to recall the Dáil as it didn't sit for 20 days. And all the while, households faced soaring bills while workers struggled to get to work. And farmers and contractors, they faced rising prices and input costs with no support from government. And we've seen businesses being pushed closer and closer to the edge. A failure, a dereliction of duty, leaving people with no option but to rise up and take to the streets. And instead of listening, what did Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Independents do? You dismiss them. You talk down to them. You refuse to meet them. You threaten them. You threaten the army on your own people. Families struggling to heat their homes, for God's sake. Workers struggling to get to work. Farmers and rural communities trying to keep going. And this government's instinct wasn't to help them, it was to threaten them. That's not leadership, that's arrogance. That's a government that's out of touch. And now, what are people being asked to have confidence in? A package that still doesn't make fuel affordable. A 10-cent cut in excise, gone with the next price increase. You outright refuse to cut carbon taxes, no removal of excise on home heating oil at all, nothing that fundamentally changes things for ordinary households or rural communities. No real relief for workers, for farmers or families, no support at all for disabled people. This is not a solution. It is a holding operation designed to contain the anger, not solve the problem. And you know something? People see right through it. So let me say what would actually build confidence. Cut excise on diesel to a level that makes it affordable and hold it there. Match that reduction with petrol. Remove carbon tax from home heating oil and do the same on green diesel to support our farmers and our contractors and deliver real supports to households as well as sectors. And include in that the energy credits to make sure that people are supported with sky-high electricity costs. That's what real intervention looks like, folks. That's what leadership looks like. So I say to the so-called independents over there and to the backbenchers opposite in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, you know damn well what's happening in your communities. You're hearing it every single day. People are angry and people are struggling and people are being pushed to the limit here. Sinn Féin has brought their voice into this chamber. Now, all of you have a choice. You either stand with Micheál Martin and Simon Harris, or you stand with the ordinary Irish people. Because confidence isn't something you demand, it's something you earn. And this government has not earned it. It's ignored the warnings, it's allowed the crisis to escalate, it's responded too late, and even now, it refuses to act decisively. I was elected by ordinary people. I speak out for ordinary people. And today I stand with ordinary people in voting no confidence in this government. It is time for you to go.
Deputy Ivana Deputy Ivana
Count Corlett, Labour has no confidence in this government. This government has failed to tackle the cost of living crisis. Its members have shown a total disregard for the mounting pressures facing households and businesses across the country. The Labour Party warned in March, when the first package of measures was announced, that workers and families would continue to face impossible cost burdens. We warned then that government needed to adopt robust policies on renewable energy, on transport costs and on remote working. The events of last week and the support from the public for the aims of the protests was not just about fuel prices. But the government has patently failed to recognise this. They failed to recognise why so many people across the country are so angry with them. And it's about energy bills, yes, but it's also about exorbitant rents and mortgage costs, about house prices, childcare, education and healthcare costs, waiting lists and more. It's about a budget last October that did nothing for working people. It's about a housing crisis only getting worse as more and more of our young people choose to leave this country because they see no future here. It's about the thousands stuck on waiting lists for treatment therapies, disability services, assessments of needs. It's about a lack of special education supports for children with additional needs, and so much more. Last week, Labour recognised the deep distress and frustration felt by so many. Last Wednesday morning, we called on the government to engage urgently with representative groups to ensure a resolution. We also called for the lifting of blockades to limit disruption to families' lives and businesses and ensure fuel reached those who needed it. We rejected intimidatory tactics of some, while absolutely respecting the right to peaceful protest of many. But we watched all week in mounting dismay as your government ministers responded by going on the airwaves pouring petrol on the flames of anger, instead of de-escalating, inflaming the situation. The meeting you eventually convened on Friday afternoon could and should have been held sooner. Government could and should have acted more swiftly to address the real and genuine concerns of so many. The government's actions over the last week alone have shown that it's incapable of handling crisis situations. This government is worn out, tired out and zoned out from the reality of people's lives. After too many years in office, this government of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Lowry Group and it seems half the Healy Rays just didn't get the message. Indeed, in the week before Easter, the message should have been received loud and clear about the growing fuel and energy security crisis resulting from Trump and Netanyahu's illegal warmongering in Iran and Lebanon. But government leaders were more focused then on talking about tax cuts for the rich. In the week when grocery inflation was reported at over 6%, the Tánaiste was on a media blitz for his new investment savings scheme, while 320,000 households are in arrears on their electricity bills. The Taoiseach was ruminating on inheritance tax cuts in the next budget. That's where the government's priority was, totally out of touch. And as protests began, there followed a week of dithering, confusion, mixed messages, bombastic statements issued by Taoiseach and Tánaiste on Wednesday night, but no real follow-through. On Thursday morning, the Justice Minister ratcheting up the tension by announcing that the assistance of the Defence Forces had been requested. In his rush to get on the airwaves, it appears he neglected to consult with the Minister for Defence. His intervention only inflamed the situation further. Not to be outdone, of course, the Minister for Media announced yesterday that he wants Comisiún na Man to investigate media coverage of the protests. Goodbye, Viktor Orban. Hello, Patrick O'Donovan. At best,
I see there was a sliding tackle from Commissioner na Man earlier on.
At best, one might hope this was a cynical attempt to distract from a disastrous week for the government. But at worst, and in seriousness, it's a minister resorting to sinister threats against the national broadcaster because it was doing its job of reporting fairly on events around the country.
Yet as bad as last week was, Ceann Comhairle, the real crisis has yet to properly hit us. The International Energy Agency has been warning for weeks that the world now faces the most severe energy crisis ever recorded, a supply shock yet to properly hit Ireland or Europe. So, Taoiseach, where is our national fuel security plan? The crisis of last week shows a shocking unpreparedness if we end up facing a fuel rationing situation. The Labour Party has no confidence in this government to bring forward the radical proposals that need to be introduced as the IEA has advised. Proposals that indeed Labour has made for remote working, for making public transport free, for taking serious measures to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. Ireland needs real action now to invest in renewable energy, retrofitting solar and wind installation, to reduce energy costs, to curb emissions and to tackle the climate crisis. And that's another reason why Labour has no confidence in this administration. Because by your deeds and actions, you've shown yourselves to be the most conservative and ideologically right-wing government in a generation. You've consistently rowed back on climate action commitments. You've arrogantly dismissed and consistently voted down constructive proposals from Labour and others in opposition on taking action on housing, on workers' rights, on the cost of living. You stopped sick pay increases. You rowed back on a living wage. You voted down our Labour bill on the right to remote working. You sneer at calls for stronger state action on housing or the development of a state construction company. And Taoiseach, your budget last October provided no relief for working people, failing to index income taxes, removing vital once-off supports, and at the same time committing millions to untargeted VAT cuts for construction and hospitality, big builders and burger barons. The value of those VAT cuts will be washed away in the inflation likely to hit us over the next 6 months. The price of construction of a house already reported to have increased by 25 to 30,000 euro. A VAT cut on hospitality that was never going to be passed on anyway, and that would have been better spent on targeted supports for those now in fuel and energy poverty. Taoiseach, this government cannot be trusted to manage the public finances. There's a €600 million deficit already forecast for the Department of Education. You've managed to spend nearly £1 billion on fuel supports without any new measures that will tackle energy poverty or that will address the near €200 million of arrears on household gas and electricity bills. And as our Labour finance spokesperson Jed Nash has said, the measures you announced on Sunday are designed to placate sectoral interests, effectively abandoning PAYE workers. Low and middle income earners who have no option other than to pay taxes, but whose pay packets are under increasing pressure in this cost of living crisis. Pressure from rising energy bills, but also from skyrocketing grocery prices as we face food insecurity, from escalating housing costs. Taoiseach, we need substantive engagement from government at the upcoming LEAF talks, substantive engagement with the trade unions, and Labour will strongly support the trade union movement in seeking pay rises for hard-pressed workers and working families. So as I move to conclude, Ceann Comhairle, we all know who caused the outbreak of this most recent fuel crisis. Yet your government has failed to condemn the illegal war launched by Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. We know that our economy, our energy security, our society is being threatened because of the actions of the US and Israel. So the government must now call in the US ambassador, challenge them on their illegal warmongering, their threats to wipe out a civilization made just a week ago, and their ongoing blockade of ships. We must recognise the United States is not acting as a friend anymore, and the fuel protests result from the US and Israel's war in Iran. The government must press the EU to sanction Israel as it seeks to conquer southern Lebanon, and we're watching in horror as Israel erases villages from the map, colonises the West Bank, continues to destroy Gaza and entrench its system of apartheid. When will the EU act to end the trade agreement with Israel? When will your government act to pass the Occupied Territories Bill that you committed to in the general election, but that you walked away from once office was secured? Now is the time, Taoiseach, and you'd have opposition support to send America and Israel a real message on this, to pass the occupied territories in full, to cover trade in goods and services, to work with Spain and other progressives across the EU, to force the EU to suspend the Israel trade agreement. These are real things that could be done, but we know you won't do them. because your Conservative government lacks the courage to do so. So, Taoiseach, you have failed PAYE workers, you've failed struggling households and hard-pressed families. We in the Labour Party have no confidence in you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Helen McEntee.
And Corlia, I join with colleagues in supporting this motion of confidence in the government today. We are living through a period of profound global instability. Across the Gulf, we're seeing not only disruption to energy supply and vital shipping routes, but we are witnessing the further appalling and unacceptable loss of life, the human cost of which cannot be overlooked. And so it is essential that we progress and engage with colleagues to urgently de-escalate and sustain our diplomatic engagement. And so I will continue with government to engage with colleagues and counterparts across the Gulf, the Middle East, with our ambassadors on the ground, with our colleagues in the EU, and of course with our counterparts in the US. The partial closure and blockading of the Strait of Hormuz has had immediate and far-reaching consequences, sending shockwaves through global markets. And as we all know, it is directly impacting families and businesses here in Ireland. We can see it at the pumps, we see it in our bills, we are seeing it in the cost of living that people are facing every day. And we are all in government listening to the concerns of people, to our constituents and beyond. Despite the uncertainty, despite the global uncertainty, this government has acted, and we are among the first governments to respond in recent weeks, responding at a greater level than many other countries. We've intervened early with an initial package of €250 million, making it clear at the time that we would continue to engage with those most impacted, but also recognising the evolving nature of this crisis, including the possibility that fuel costs might ease in the event of a ceasefire. This has not been the case, and so engagement has continued. Opposition does not have a monopoly on engagement. We've all spoken to those in our constituents, to hauliers, to farmers, to bus operators, to farm contractors. We've engaged over the last number of weeks. We've engaged with those hardest hit by the increase in fuel costs, but we're also recognising that everybody is being hit by this global crisis. That's why a further package of €525 million was agreed at government this week. This is a direct response to the engagement and the concerns raised with all of us. I wonder, will opposition support this package, or will they reject it in the way they did the previous €250 million? Ken Corley, peaceful protest is a fundamental part of our democracy. It must always be respected, and indeed we must all protect it. However, preventing fuel from reaching communities during a fuel crisis at a time when supply chains are under pressure, these actions, they only risk shortages and they place further strain on communities. Strains and pressures that we are experiencing, again to stress, driven mainly by global events, by conflict, by instability and by supply chain disruption far beyond our shores. What we can do as a government, and what we are doing, is to mitigate those impacts, and we will continue to support people in whatever way that we can as a government to protect jobs, to protect livelihoods and to support our communities the length and breadth of
Minister Jack Chambers.
Corla, the conflict in the Middle East and the global energy crisis has created major challenges for economies around the world. And the government fully understands the significant pressure that rising costs are placing on so many families, workers and businesses across our country. All deputies in this House are listening to people and businesses who are struggling. Listening, engaging and understanding is what has informed the significant intervention that the government has been able to make. However, the sum of the actions in the last week, blockading critical infrastructure, restricting free movement of people, disrupting critical supply chains and threatening on Garda Síochána is reckless, irresponsible and deeply concerning for our society. In the space of 6 weeks, more than 700 million of support has now been made available to workers, households, businesses and the sectors most exposed to the increased fuel prices. Following specific engagement, we've obviously provided supports in transport, agriculture, but unlike what Deputy Batchik said there, the majority of workers across the economy will benefit from the reduction in excise in terms of the price at the pump, and also the significant support that's been made around the expansion of the fuel allowance. And while all countries are impacted, none have responded on the scale we've been able to provide for our citizens with the largest per capita support package of any EU member state. Táim de gobar de hir ag éisteach le daoine agus ag déanamh ar níhill an brú atá ar dhaoine a laidú. on Tánaiste seamach agus ó húsach na bliana, churmar a pakastí a chomhracha chun phobal chun cín. The reason Ireland is uniquely placed to make such a timely, time-bound and targeted intervention is because of the strength of our economy and of our public finances. We have run budget surpluses every year since 22. We have record employment levels and 500,000 more people working in our economy than at the start of the decade. We continue to reduce our debt. We are delivering record expansion of public services. And by the end of this year, we'll have put 24 billion aside into 2 long-term funds. And this is why we've been able to respond to the sudden global economic shocks. And our economic strength hasn't been created by chance. It's because of the hard work of Irish people and of the responsible and sensible decisions taken by government, grounded in a pro-enterprise approach, being careful in how we expand expenditure. And all I hear from the opposition is a model of higher tax, higher spending, more expansion and continued populism in every decision that they seek to promote. And the decisions that we take at all times have been responsible, always in the national interest, building resilience. And a response to the challenge of today must allow us to be able to respond to the unknown challenges of tomorrow. As we speak here, huge uncertainty remains about the conflict in the Middle East and the knock-on long-term impact on that conflict on prices and inflation.
Ceann Comhairle, at no point over the last week did any member of Sinn Féin speak about the impact the blockades had on ordinary people, sick people trying to get to hospital appointments, workers trying to get to work, families visiting relatives, business owners losing customers. Instead, they spoke about how the government wasn't doing enough. Not once did they criticise the blockades, which caused such misery to people across this country. And their response today is to table a no-confidence motion in a government which is working hard every day to deliver on commitments that we've made to the Irish people. Since being appointed Minister for Education and Youth last November, I've been working with Minister Michael Moynihan and delivered a number of important programme for government commitments. These will have a real impact on our education system, will help students, young people and support teachers and school staff. Let me inform the House in regards to my department, what we have been doing over the last number of months. On special education, we've announced the opening of 4 new special schools and detailed the rollout of the new education therapy services, which will see therapists working with children, teachers and SNAs in our special schools. To help tackle educational disadvantage, we've announced the biggest ever investment in a single year of €48 million in the new DESH strategy and DESH Plus scheme, which includes targeted supports for 121 schools with the highest level of educational disadvantage. We've begun accepting applications for supports for survivors of abuse in residential institutions, such as industrial schools and reformatories. And to ensure our education system continues to deliver world-class outcomes, we have launched the National Conversation on Education and the National Convention on the Future of Education. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for children, young people, parents, educators and wider society to help Ireland's education system for decades to come. I could go on to speak about the €7.55 billion capital investment. I have full confidence in this government.
Thank you very much, Ceann Comhairle, and I welcome this discussion today and indeed the opportunity to speak in full confidence in this government and its leadership. And there is no doubt that this stall and every single one of us here, all of us elected representatives, are experiencing in our constituencies the impact of global political uncertainty on real people, families and businesses. Events that seem so far away geographically have a very immediate impact on everyday costs for people, from food to fuel, the very basics. I think we can all acknowledge that this is a deeply challenging period, but it's also a period that demands that we work together in this House rather than against each other to ensure we protect this state and our people to the best of our ability. If we ever needed reminding as to our status as an open economy on the edge of Europe, the war in Iran has once again confirmed this for us all, even after Ukraine, Brexit and COVID. This government has been elected with the task of managing these impacts and being responsible in our response to them as they arise, but also with an eye to how each and every action and measure we take have consequences. We have to manage as elected representatives the impact of rising oil prices, the need to act robustly to protect jobs and futures, to ensure we fund our key services and supports, to deliver safe and secure housing for our people, and investing proactively and sustainably to get costs down for ordinary people. That is our job. It is one each of us has elected to do and to take seriously. And we have the resources. It is due to the stewardship of our country by this government and indeed by previous governments that we have been in a position to act and act decisively with financial supports. Our state has experienced the effects of global wars, both in Ukraine and on the edge of Europe, and the war in Iran and indeed the pandemic over the last 5 years, which have in turn placed systemic pressures on how we do business. And this government has responded and responded robustly, but must do so in a sustainable way. Can I just say, Count Corl, as Minister for Housing and Local Government, can I thank our fire services and our local authorities who stepped up in a very difficult circumstances over the last couple of weeks. Thank you, Count Corl.
Deputy Carty.
And Gorla, for all the government's arrogance and backslapping, the truth that ministers haven't divulged is that your TDs are under more pressure today than they have been in a political lifetime. And that pressure, Dara, isn't coming from Sinn Féin or any other party. It's coming from your own constituents. Yes, Sinn Féin tabled the no confidence motion, but we're just the messenger, folks. The message has been sent loud and clear. This government has failed and you've lost the trust of the people. Hear, hear. You refuse to listen or acknowledge the financial pressures facing workers, carers, people with disabilities, families. You ignored small businesses, farmers, contractors, bus drivers, hauliers, virtually everyone else. You introduced a budget. You introduced a budget that actually made people worse off, and then you had to be dragged kicking and screaming to act, and when you did, you introduced half measures. Those that have been making their voices heard are the salt of the earth. I've spoken to them. Hard-working people, most of whom actually had never protested before in their lives. They were the same people actually that we turned to when the parties in government actually crashed the economy. They were the people who lost businesses and then rebuilt them. They're the people who went without meals in order to save their farms and their homes because you bailed out the banks instead. They're the backbone of the domestic economy, the lifeline of every town and village and rural community in this state. And their voices have been heard loud and clear. And the question today is, have you lot listened? Because Ciancorla is Choti Dála Midge. When the revolutionary generation established the first Dáil, they made a very significant decision. Elected representatives wouldn't simply be titled members of Parliament. Instead, those returned by voters wouldn't be given so much as a title, but an obligation. Choti Dála, messengers of the people. And today is the day for every member of this House to bring the message of the people to this government. So will Fianna Fáil TDs actually bring the message that they've been receiving from their constituents? Will Fine Gael TDs? What about the independents, those who pretend to be champions of the people? Will they act in the interest of those who elected them, or will they act in their own self-interest? Because the truth is, if TDs are to live up to the promise of those who established on Céad Dáil, if they're to fulfil the pledge to be messengers of the people, then this government will be gone tonight. It's time, Akarja, to pick a side. You're either on the side of those who you pledge to represent, or you're on the side of this debacle of a government. Ciancorla, I'll be bringing the message of my constituents to this Dáil this evening. I will be voting no confidence in this shambolic government.
Deputy Holly Cairns. Deputy Holly Cairns.
Ciancorla, we're here today because this government doesn't listen. It doesn't listen to the opposition. It doesn't listen to its own backbenchers. And most importantly, it doesn't listen to the people. The cost of living crisis didn't suddenly emerge 6 weeks ago when Trump attacked Iran. It has been growing and growing for years. And this government has had the resources to provide meaningful support to people, but refused to. Instead, people have watched while you wasted countless billions, failed to deliver critical public services, housing and infrastructure, all while giving sermons about the importance of fiscal prudence. That is the backdrop to these protests. Life in this country has become totally unaffordable for an ever-increasing number of people. People working long hours every week, barely seeing their families, and really struggling just to pay for the basics. Pensioners who spend long evenings in freezing homes because they can't afford to turn on the heat. Disabled people choosing between heating their home or charging their mobility aid. The pressure is relentless and it is draining. The cost of groceries, energy and housing has all skyrocketed with no end in sight. For many, the fuel increases were a tipping point, and these protests were a way to express that. I want to be clear that the Social Democrats do not agree with blockades of critical infrastructure, but I do understand people's frustration and their growing sense of desperation. Last week, as protests began to grow, instead of recognising that frustration and that desperation and engaging with people, the government refused to listen. A succession of senior ministers issued combative, patronising and dismissive statements. The Minister for Justice was talking about sending out the Defence Forces before anyone had even spoken to the protesters. That is not leadership. That is a failure of leadership. The vast majority of protesters are farmers, hauliers and ordinary people who simply cannot keep up with the rising cost of living. Taoiseach, one of the most stressful things is the thought of not being able to put food on the table. The mental health impact on people who rely on diesel to do their jobs does not seem to register with this government. People are terrified. They do not want to be out on the streets. They want their government to listen to them. They want their government to help them. Your failure to do so created a vacuum that has allowed a small number of far-right actors to try to hijack the protest for their own agenda. Taoiseach, you played right into their hands. And now, instead of reflecting on your complete mishandling of this crisis, the government is engaged in a blame game. The Communications Minister is even blaming the media. And you come in here today, the first occasion the opposition has to ask questions, and you rip up the Dáil schedule and prevent us from even doing that, showing contempt for this House as well as the people who elected us to hold you accountable. It is shameful. And it shows the complete arrogance of this government and your complete inability to read the room. Proposing a package of measures that will be of little assistance to the vast majority of people. 700,000 households all over the country are reliant on home heating oil. The cost of it has soared 70% in just under a month. And there is nothing in your proposal to address this. It is further evidence, not that we needed it, that no lessons have been learned. Ceann Comhairle, we all know that these latest price shocks are the fault of Trump and his illegal war with Iran. But the scale of the impact here is not inevitable. It is the result of political choices. A political choice to cut the incomes of disabled people by €1,400 a year. A political choice to sit back while 315,000 households go into energy arrears. And a political choice to fail to make renewable energy like solar accessible. This government's political choices have failed to protect people from exactly this kind of price shock. That is a failure of vision, and that failure is all yours. The Social Democrats have an alternative vision for this country and a plan for immediate, targeted financial supports for those who are struggling the most right now, which would deliver a €400 energy credit for households earning up to €70,000, a real, tangible solution to help people who are struggling the most. A Solar for All scheme to double grants to 3,600 and cut people's bills by $450 each year. These are proposals that we're not just talking about, we're bringing them to the Dáil tomorrow.
Deputy O'Callaghan.
Ceann Comhairle, gach law, gach seachtain, feicimid rialtas atá cáilte a bhealach. Rialtas nach bhfuil cuireann Free Ganadini. This is a government that does not listen, doesn't listen to the people, to the opposition, but doesn't listen to your own backbenchers. Having ignored all the warnings, the government stumbled into a full-blown crisis last week. When calm leadership was required, we got chaos. Instead of pursuing a strategy of de-escalation, ministers decided to fan the flames. GI Jim O'Callaghan arrived on the scene thinking that he was Rambo, Cá bhfuil sé anois. The last thing that the country needed was that approach. Thankfully, a very effective, professional policing response from Garda Síochána brought the country back from the brink. As the dust settles, people really struggling with the cost of living remain left behind, forgotten by this government. The people who can't get their demands high up on the agenda by parking their trucks on O'Connell Street. The people with disabilities who are already €1,400 worse off after this year's budget. The woman in my constituency who had to make a choice this winter between heating her home and recharging her electric mobility aid. This meant she was virtually housebound for the winter. That's what this government is doing to people. The words of a nurse sum up what so many people around the country are experiencing, and I quote, "I'm working with the HSE for 16 years. My paycheck goes straight to my account to pay bills, rent, childcare fees. I am in huge debt." Taoiseach Tánaiste, she should listen to this. She says, "I cannot get a deposit for a mortgage together. I cannot afford for a small wedding for myself and my fiancée. I cannot afford to go to the doctor or the dentist when I'm sick or ill. And by the end of the week, my fridge is almost empty."
Taoiseach, I think it's clear from listening to your speeches this afternoon that you still don't get it. You stood up here today and essentially listed out all your so-called achievements, telling people really how good it is. No, you did. It really sort of getting that message, trying to get that message across to people that actually, you know, we've done so much for you. The reality is you haven't been listening, and that's just really, really clear. It was a desperately difficult week last week for the country. I don't think anyone would think that it was an easy thing to resolve. And even the people that I speak to in my constituency, and indeed in the constituency of the Tánaiste, they were deeply conflicted because many of them didn't agree with the blockades. Many didn't agree with people's appointments being blocked. They didn't necessarily agree with or align themselves with some of the people who were leading the protests, but they could understand why they were doing it. And the reason they could understand why they were doing it, why they'd left their homes, why they were, you know, living out of their tractors or their trailers on O'Connell Street, they could understand it because they could empathise with it because they too are living through it. They know how difficult it is. The people I spoke to in Wicklow weren't necessarily talking about fuel costs. They were talking about disability services to me. They were talking about education. They were talking about childcare. So they were talking to me about their lived experience and the difficulties that they're facing. Energy costs, food costs. It is piling up and up. And the reality is the strikes last week and the protests last week, they weren't necessarily just about fuel. They're about a government who has frittered away billions, that hasn't listened, and are leaving huge numbers of people in this country struggling to keep their head above
Thank
water.
you, Deputy Whitmore. Your
I'd
time
ask
is
that
up.
you pay attention
Minister
to them.
Norma Foley.
Ceann Comhairle, this is a time of global uncertainty and a time of great difficulty and anxiety for all of society. I am more than conscious of the impact that a series of geopolitical shocks have had on people's earnings and their spending power. Inflation hurts everyone. Each crisis, Brexit, COVID-19, Ukraine, Gaza, US trade tariffs, the military action by Israel and the United States against Iran, each one has had a damaging impact on the prices of everyday items, ranging from the weekly shop to clothing prices to topping up at the fuel pump. Tá is a go náfach in aimsir na géir céime go bhfuil gá le rialtas cósaí, daingean agus sláán sa bháilte. Rialtas a chuirigh ar fáil ní ba séad a bháin ach gá, trí, ceithre agus cúig ba séad de réir a mandáid déan leatha chun bobal. We know in times of crisis there is a need for stable and secure government, A government which will deliver not one, but 2, 3, 4 and 5 budgets in line with its democratic mandate from the people. This government is providing supports to cushion the inflationary blow insofar as is possible within the limits of the responsible management of the public finances, always mindful of the unpredictable and volatile nature of global affairs, which could lead to further economic shocks at any time in the future. Mara derimid ní hélón ríthe lá na scalab. In these challenging times, responsible, stable and measured government is what is required. This government is delivering just that, and for that reason, I will support the motion of confidence this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Ceann Comhairle. In 2 minutes, it's very difficult to make a substantive contribution on such an important topic. But I just want to make, I think, and focus on one particular aspect. That we are all, as someone referred to, messengers of the people. We all need to listen to everybody. And I think, and there's a real problem with the way in which the opposition, particularly in this parliament, behave, in that they listen, I believe, to the people who shout loudest to do this. That's not the entire population of our country. There's a whole section of our world, our society, of people, ordinary people, particularly older people, senior citizens, people who last week couldn't get medical appointments. One woman met me at the weekend, absolutely distraught over the fact, having spent 5 hours to get to her appointment, the consultant and doctors couldn't get to the hospital, so they couldn't provide it. But no one, she said, literally said to me, I don't know how to post on Instagram. I don't know how to go on Twitter, so no one will hear my side of the story. Now, I fully recognize that people have a right to protest. And I fully recognize that people feel real pain over the costs. But you don't have the right to destroy someone else's life. There has to be a balance. And we as parliamentarians don't have the right to clearly decide to pick one side because it shouts loudest and you think you can get a political stunt out of it. That's not what democracy should be about. That's not representing all the people. That's choosing very selectively to represent. And unfortunately for us, it's the worst of representation because it's actually saying that if you have access to social media, if you can shout the loudest, then I'll weigh in behind you, but I won't listen to what's happening to other ordinary people.
People are under real pressure, and that is understood. And the frustrations we have seen in recent days do not appear overnight. They reflect something far deeper, more primal. A sense for many that everyday life has become harder, more expensive, and more uncertain. And we need to acknowledge that sincerely and respectfully. However, we also have a duty to be straight with people. Government does not control the price of global oil. We are exposed as an island, an open economy, to which shocks that originate far beyond our shores. We are exposed in terms of our dependence on imported fossil fuels, shipped to our shores from regions far beyond around the globe. And we are vulnerable in terms of our supply chains, our just-in-time delivery model, where a fast-moving economy expects and demands goods and ingredients to keep flowing, and no more than our society, with everything from clean water to animal feed to medical supplies operating and moving at pace. We need to build resilience, and we need to safeguard those critical ports and arteries. I saw firsthand 2 years ago the devastation that Holyhead being taken up by a storm did. I never thought we'd see that done in a deliberate, man-made fashion. What we are doing today in response is controlling what we can control, reducing the impact with the tools available to us. And the package that we have announced mitigates the worst of this, cutting costs, deferring the carbon tax, cutting excise duties, and targeted supports to targeted sectors. In fact, per capita, it is 5 times the equivalent package in Germany. It stands out across Europe. But it is also true to say that we have to level with people that we cannot buy our way out of every problem. We have to take sustainable steps, repeatable steps that support everything that we need to do. Within my department, I'm strengthening research, apprenticeships, education to build out the knowledge economy of the future. And I'm also commissioning research to the Science and Research mandate to explore options around the energy mix and ensure that energy security as something that can be approached evidence-based policy. That is real responsible government, providing solutions, not slogans.
Good morning, Ceann. We very much acknowledge the pressures that people, small businesses and many communities are under at the moment. Families are working hard, we're doing everything right, but they continue to experience huge uncertainty and huge challenge. We hear that and we have acted not just in the package this week and a number of weeks ago, but also in the budget. In the working in the fuel allowance, 470,000 people now receive fuel allowance. For the first time, working families receive the fuel allowance, and we've increased it by 4 weeks this year. We also have supported farmers, supported contractors, supported transport companies against the worst of the excesses. We also have to be honest, so that we cannot support them through every challenge that will face them. Interventions are important and necessary, but we cannot be false with people and tell them that we can get them through every challenge that we'll face. I want not just have confidence in this government, more importantly, I have confidence in our country, and I have confidence in the people of the country. We have faced challenges before. We have faced a succession of challenges over the last 10 years in particular that have put enormous pressure on people's incomes, on people's businesses. But we will continue to work with them to get through those challenges. Tá muinní agam ní bháin sa tír seo, ach tá muinní agam í muintir an tír seo. Agus té seo tábhachtach le an córa gur cheasamid ar chun agus leis na daoine an tír seo go háirithe ag an pointir seo. It's important that we stand with people and that we support them. It's important that we hear them. But in hearing them, we have to be honest about the challenges that are ahead. The biggest energy shock, not just supply-wise, but cost-wise, in over 50 years. And that conversation has to be honest. Yes, it is important that we support people and it's important that we stand with them, but we have to be honest as well.
Ganoras tá an duine go léir faoi bhrú, ach tá é an rialtas a géisteacht, tá mé é caint go móbhar leis an gnáduine agus tá mé é gobar ar chun gach duine. And this debate is nothing but a charade, because if the members opposite wanted to have questions, they wouldn't have put a motion of conference or no conference, they'd have had question time. The reality is, Deputy, people want us to govern. People are under pressure. That's why government intervened twice. And I would make, as a member of the House of the Oireachtas for 19 years, I would make a comment to members of both Houses of the Oireachtas. Our language and our words matter. And Deputy Curran speaks about leadership. But leadership isn't about sticking your finger in the air and wondering what way the wind is going. It's about acting on behalf of the people. It's about acting on behalf of the people. And if government didn't listen, didn't engage Deputy O'Tobin, we wouldn't have had a second package, €750 million. No, €750 million. Language, Deputy, matters. Language is critical. People listen, people watch. And I will make the point, and I want to conclude in this, Ceann Comhairle. I want to thank the men and women of An Garda Síochána for their leadership in the last 7 days. I've spoken to them. I've met with them. Some of them are friends of mine. Behind the Instagram or the TikTok video, there's truth and there's reality. To the men and women of An Garda Síochána, let us say thank you, irrespective of our political ideology, because without them we'd be a poorer state. To all of us in this House, we have a mandate. We are elected by the people. We go before the people in an election. I'll conclude in this. We go before the people.
Minister,
our Constitution preserves that right.
Minister Deputy Denise Mitchell.
I have no confidence in this government. I never had confidence in this government because over the years I've watched as the concerns of ordinary people and workers take a back seat. So Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael can please big businesses, lobbyists and vulture funds. And the thing that really gets to me is the unfairness of it all. We have thousands of children homeless. And at the same time, we see this government throwing families to the wolves with their rent hike bill.
We've seen houses and apartment blocks being snapped up by vulture funds who pay little or no tax, and then they rent it back to hard-working people at outrageous prices. Ministers, families in my constituency are struggling with their ESB bills. We have elderly people who are terrified to turn on their heating because of the cost. Meanwhile, in Clonshock, we've data centres paying half of what households do for their electricity. Can I ask you here, how is that fair? We had promises from government of a cost of disability payment, for an end to the means test for carers. More broken promises. Instead, you left them worse off after your budget. Whatever happened to standing up for the people who get up early in the morning? Remember that phrase, the phrase Fine Gael was so fond of? Well, they got nothing. And I cannot be the only TD in Dublin Bay North who's hearing about the unfairness of it all. I'm sure the Fianna Fáil deputies and the Fine Gael deputy and Deputy Heenahan is hearing it too. And if they're hearing it, then I need to ask you, do you care? Because people want a government who will listen to them and make decisions that will make their lives easier. But as usual, we have too little, too late, with half measures coming again from Fianna Fáil and from Fine Gael, all backed by the so-called regional independents. People like Deputy Heenahan in my constituency, who told voters he would be an independent voice, who would be free from party restrictions. But the reality is, he and the rest of the Lowry lackeys take their orders from Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, and you're still giving the two fingers up to the ordinary people. So I don't have confidence in Fianna Fáil. I don't have confidence in Fine Gael, and I don't have confidence in the so-called independents.
And the Taoiseach have left the chamber. It's an insult to this Dáil, and it's proof positive that not only will they not listen to the Irish people, but they won't listen to TDs in this House. We have a cost of living crisis on top of a cost of living crisis. And that crisis has been deliberately worsened by government policy which favours the rich and powerful in our society and dumbs down on the ordinary, decent working people and their families. In the teeth of a cost of living crisis in this year's budget, the government abolished energy credits, abolished social welfare supports, leaving thousands of families worse off by up to €1,400, and hiked up income tax on PAYE workers. And to add insult to injury, at the same time, they gave hundreds of millions of euros to big developers, to big corporate landlords, and gave the guts of 690 million euros to burger barons of the big fast food chains. On top of that, the government is presiding over a housing crisis, a disability crisis and a health crisis. Ordinary, decent, hard-working people are at the pin of their collar to make ends meet. In the last week, the government's arrogance insulted, abused and threatened peaceful protesters. That threat to call in the army was absolutely shameful. Did you call in the army to deal with the far-right violent thugs on O'Connell Street in Dublin in 2023? I have no confidence in the government.
I think the Tánaiste and the Taoiseach aren't here. It's an absolute disgrace, and it just sums up the arrogance and the ignorance of them, particularly the many issues that we've got going on in Donegal. I was elected in here 17 months ago on the mandate of trying to deliver 100% redress for the people of Donegal. And I've tried to engage with them, but it's like talking to a brick wall, pardon the pun, a brick wall, but they do not want to listen. They do not care about the people of Donegal. They never have. We've seen people die from suicide in Donegal with defective concrete. They don't give a damn about us. They have left us and abandoned us for years and years. 14 years we've waited. We've had 2 schemes that failed, and then we have this. Last week was the final straw. When the government turned on their own citizens on the street and then put out the propaganda that there was certain elements of this. People are fed up. They do not have the money to heat in their houses. We've been left for years abandoning Donegal, and this government now are absolutely at the end of it in Donegal. We've had it. So the people of Donegal voted me in, and I today will vote a vote of no confidence in this government. And I will tell the independents, Lowry's group, to do the same. Do the right thing.
Listening to the government talking about misery and missed hospital appointments. The housing minister who's left now, there's an eviction tsunami in my constituency. 2/3 of under 35s are living with their parents, and need I go on. This is a government that leaves vast wealth untapped and untouched. 11 billionaires have 85% of the wealth in Ireland. Now, the protests last week, they were peaceful protests. They were certainly forceful. They were impactful. But, you know, this idea that you leave critical infrastructure untouched, how do you think we won the right to vote? How do you think we won basic rights in this country, including how Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael were formed? And the majority of people supported them because somebody was having a go in this country. That was it. Even though I don't have a connection with rural contractors or whatever, that was the feeling of most people. This began with the budget, and it continued on with the package that you brought in. You would not listen to the opposition, who were saying that this was not dealing with the fundamental problem, that there's a cost of living crisis, huge electricity arrears. What have you brought in today to deal with that? Home heating oil. How are people going to heat their homes? Mortgage arrears, rent arrears, all of the problems facing ordinary people. This is not going to deal with the issue. Workers need to step into action now.
The Green Party has no confidence in this government, and I'll vote against it. Over the course of the last week, the actions of the government continually made a difficult situation worse. Ministers caused confusion, unnecessarily raised tensions, and ultimately failed to protect the Irish people's ability to move and go about their business for 5 long days. Hospital appointments were missed, emergency vehicles were delayed, people couldn't get to work, and vitally, access to fuel was and continues to be disrupted. The origins of the energy price crisis is our country's over-reliance on fossil fuels. And the war in Iran has shown for the second time in 4 years how our economy is totally at the mercy of the whims of Putin, of Trump, of the Ayatollah. And yet, as part of their response, the government is undermining the very actions that will reduce our dependence on foreign fossil fuels. Measures like the Warmer Home Scheme, measures like retrofit, the funding for these measures has now been put at risk by the deferral of the carbon tax. Our country will remain vulnerable to energy shocks until we transition our entire economy to renewable sources of energy. And across the last 15 months, this government has demonstrated that it does not possess the belief in that transition to be able to make the case for it to the Irish people.
Thanks. It looks like this government is going to hang on to power for now, with the votes of the Lowry-Lackey independents. And there's a very important lesson for everybody in that. Don't trust these fake independents. These are sheep in wolves' clothing. People who pretend to stand for the ordinary person, but in reality just seek to get into bed and get into government with Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael. It's why we want a general election. It's why we want a left government. But there's another lesson here, and that's a lesson for you. The people on the streets are more powerful than the people supposedly in power. We have seen the power of ordinary people in the last week, and this must now be the start of a new phase of militant, effective protest involving trade unions, communities, mobilising for action for everybody on the cost of living crisis.
In 1913, Ireland's greatest revolutionary, James Connolly, whose statue is behind us here in this building, led the Dublin working class out for a year of disruptive strike action that shut the city down. And that's how the trade union movement in this country was formed. and it was done in a fight against deprivation, poverty and economic inequality, and because of the refusal of the rich and the powerful to understand the pain, the hardship and the suffering that working people were enduring at that time. That is a great tradition. And the people who went out protesting last week did so because this government refused to listen to the repeated calls for price controls and effective action to deal with the hardship and suffering affecting people with the cost of living crisis. They were right to protest. Protest works, and we need more protests.
The government's handling of the fuel price issue has been appalling. You refuse to listen to the opposition. Week after week here, we told you what was happening. You refuse to listen to the representatives of the various sectors and various bodies. I wrote to the Tánaiste in March, and I told him in that people are now running at a loss, people who have met, and cannot continue to operate as things stand, unquote. That was in March, I wrote to him. Instead, you threaten people who are trying to make a living, ordinary working people. And in Laois, it wasn't the far right. There was no far right. Ordinary, hard-working people, people who work 60, 70 plus hours a week. And you only moved to put supports in place when the protests escalated. And then the army was threatened with being brought in. For what? One army truck to move pallets that could have been moved with a Massey Ferguson 35 with a frontal loader on it. You know, a big hoo-ha about the army. We thought we were going to see them on the streets. Instead of listening and working towards a solution with people, you threatened them, and that is wrong, and you left out people. I'd be voting no confidence in the government.
And Corla, let's be clear about what's happening here today. At a time of real global uncertainty, when families are worried about the cost of living, when businesses are planning for an unpredictable future, this motion is not about stability or solutions, it's about opportunism. Sinn Féin are seeking to collapse this government because they think they can benefit from chaos. They offer noise, but not clarity. They offer disruption, but not delivery. And while they try to create instability, this government is getting on with the job at hand. We are helping people through an array of supports and through targeted measures to back workers and families through continued investment in our schools, our hospitals and our communities. We were given a mandate to govern, and we are working hard every single day to deliver on that responsibility. That mandate matters, and it should not be cast aside lightly just for political manoeuvring. We have never been found wanting in financial difficulties through COVID, through Ukraine and other shocks due to global factors. And that is why we have taken steps to intervene both prior to the Easter break and now to support our people again. Because we recognise that more needs to be done. And we will do more, particularly at budget time, to support our workers, our families and our businesses across this country. Now is not the time for government to stop its work. Now is the time to continue delivering, especially on housing. Last year, we delivered 36,000 homes. That is real progress, and we're determined to build on that and not abandon it for political theatre. On planning, we're simplifying the system to ensure timely decisions are made, red tape is cut, and that people have a reasonable expectation of receiving planning permission for a home, particularly in rural Ireland, where they want to continue to put down roots and support their local communities. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ceann Comhairle, and I welcome the opportunity to address this House. Ceann Comhairle, I was born on a small farm in East Clare. I know the struggles of my community. I know what it's like for farmers, particularly those that are small in nature and have to provide for their families. That hasn't changed since the time I was going to school. I live amongst my people. I believe nobody in this House has a monopoly on empathy, or nobody has a monopoly on the understanding of the struggles faced by the rural communities. However, there has been an attempt by some this week to usurp all the knowledge, Maria, of that, and have sought to present those of us on this side of the House as being somewhat deficient in our capacity to understand the challenges that are being faced. Together with Minister Hayden, Minister Healy-Rae and Minister Grealish, we have worked with our stakeholders under the Department of Agriculture since the crisis began, since the price of oil has gone out of all proportions with the invasion of Iran. We continued to remain in contact with them. So it wasn't really a surprise to me at the weekend as we worked through Easter and again this weekend in trying to develop a package of supports to assist them through the most difficult time that Sinn Féin early on Sunday decided to put down a motion of no confidence in the government before a package of measures were even announced. I know that's how politics works, and I know that's the role of opposition. However, I was somewhat taken too by the approach of Independent Ireland. Indeed, one of the deputies who happens to be in the House who went on public television and was explaining what they were letting through the various different ports. Now, we're elected to do certain things in this House, but I don't think we're elected or that anybody has the right to usurp the authority of the state in terms of deciding who gets what through the ports.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ceann Comhairle. I've listened to the protesters, I've listened to the workers, I've listened to the people of Kerry, the canvassers who soldiered on long days and bad nights with me over the years, to my family, to my friends, to the office staff in Kerry, Fiona and Kevin, to the Department of Agriculture people, Jackie, Casey, and all the people I adore, to my son Jackie, who's been by my side all the time. I've always looked at myself as a gauge of the people of rural Ireland, and I really believe that I am. People, when I see people begging on the side of the road, when I've seen grown men crying, last night inside in the plough bar, when I met tractor men, lorry men, farmers, and when they were telling me how unhappy they were, the leader of the country should have listened. And because of the fact that I believe this government have left the people of Ireland down, I will be voting no confidence in the leader of the country, and I will be tendering my resignation as a Minister of State from now. And I would ask that future governments and this government, that they would listen, that they would be kind, that they would be understanding. There are farmers that are really suffering so much at present. There are agricultural contractors that are really suffering. There were people that cried at the protests. And these were workers. These were respectable people. They're the people that I represented since the first day I started. Any day I get up, I don't mean to hurt or offend or do harm to anybody. When I canvassed in the election of 16, people said to me in Kerry, if we get an opportunity to go into government, will you? I said I would, if the opportunity was right and if it was good for the people of Kerry. But now the people of Kerry are telling me that they're unhappy with this government. They don't want to see me or any Healy Ray supporting it. And that is why. And I remember my late father today, and he supported governments when things were bad and things were tough. And I asked him last night before I went to bed, I said, what should I do? And the feeling that I have is the government and the leader in particular has not listened. It's a lesson for people. Sorry, just 1 second. It's a lesson for people in the future. I adored being a minister in the Department of Agriculture because I felt I was able to do good and I was passionate about my job. I'm sorry, and I thank you all very, very much.
Minister Robert Troy.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. I don't believe the people want to see us playing Punch and Judy politics here this evening. I think the government will secure a majority in the vote when the vote is taken, but it would be both foolhardy and wrong for us not to acknowledge the level of fear, anxiety and frustration felt by many of the people we represent. I, like many of my colleagues, are in continuous engagement with the people who we represent, despite what some in the opposition might like to portray. Government has acted. We now have a cumulative package of €750 million, one of the most comprehensive in Europe, and the reason we have been able to go as far as we have, further than any other EU country, is because of the strength of our economy. The opposition have the luxury of coming forward with uncosted proposals which has the potential to damage our economic model. Earlier this evening, we had a list of what they would do, but no mention of the cost of that or how that list would be funded. The root problem is we have a war in Iran, a reduction in production and supply of oil, which has left us dealing with the most severe energy crisis of modern times. No government can alleviate all of the impacts of this, but what this government must do is they must trust the people, keep them informed and always work with their best interests in mind.
Last Ken Corla, as I stand here, I'm really conscious of the pressures that people are under. At petrol stations, people are paying more and more for their fill. At supermarket tills, people are paying more and more for groceries. The cost of living is rising and the cost of doing business is rising. And that's why government have acted with the largest support package in the EU. And for those with disabilities and their families, there's an extra layer of cost, the cost of disability. And that's why Minister Derek O'Leary is developing a framework for a specific cost of disability payment. What people are feeling in their pockets, at the forecourts, at supermarket tills, is a direct result of geopolitical instability. And that's exactly why stability has never been as important as now here in Ireland. Stability in government, stability in the economy, and stability in our society. And that's what Fine Gael in government has always provided, whether it was through Brexit or COVID or now, and we'll continue to do that. As Minister of State with special responsibility for disability, I work day in and day out with my Senior Minister, Norma Foley, to support people with disabilities and their families. We have the highest ever budget for disability services, and we're working hand in hand to transform that into improved outcomes for people. Disability is our top priority, but it also needs to be a priority for every minister across government, because people don't live in government departments or silos. They live in communities and villages and towns around Ireland. And that's why disability now sits at the heart of government in the disability unit in the Department of Taoiseach to drive progress for people with disabilities right across Ireland. And we do that in co-creation and co-collaboration with people with disabilities under our National Strategy for Disabled People.
Good, Margaret. Over the last month, we have seen the government drop ball after ball. The government unwilling to talk, slow to make a decision, refusing to listen, unfit for government. And when they allow the situation to run out of control, they panic, they talk about bringing in the army, putting them on the streets and attack the media. And the time has come for TDs to make up their minds. Do they believe that the government has handled these situations in general well, not just last week or since the 28th of February or a presidential election, but back from when the election deal was done and the carve-up was completed? Are government and supporters able to deal with a crisis and react to it? And we already have seen that some people are running from government. People do not feel supported. I've seen the proposals to the house and the reaction to the housing crisis: little or no affordable housing, long waiting lists, record numbers in emergency accommodation, spiralling rents, but at the same time, grants in the form of tax break to huge developers to build expensive for-rent apartments in the larger cities. Landlords and large property owners being favoured, but people need a home that they can call their own. There's not enough funding for early intervention classes, ASD units, parents of adult children with additional needs ignored and fend for themselves. Even the weakest are ignored. Years for a refusal to extend the CAMS compensation scheme, and the boarded out children still left behind. But plenty of statements and announcements and publicity videos that we were obliged to fact check. College fees reduced? No, actually increased. More money for LIS schemes? No, actually decreased. More money for roads in Kerry? Again, not true. Funding for local and regional roads in Kerry actually decreased by 2 million this year. Housing targets being met? Another lie. Energy credits granted not because the government believed they were effective in dealing with a cost of living crisis, but to buy the election. And after the election, nothing. And I heard the Taoiseach earlier on refer to a report today that government measures have shielded people from energy bills. Yes, the same energy credits that you've stripped away. And we've already seen the reaction to that. No wonder Danny Healy-Rae had called for Fianna Fáil to oust the Taoiseach when you can't believe a word that is being said. Government, after St Patrick's Day, reacted to the Sinn Féin pressures with a half-baked package, but we knew that it was too little, too late. And I spoke to constituents over the last week, working people, angry at government waste, two-income families, small farmers, factory workers, HSE employment, some of the 750,000 people who are using home heating bill and struggling with their energy bills. These people can't afford the electric vehicles. They can't afford the retrofitting scheme. So now is a chance to tell people where you stand. Follow the lead of your colleagues in government. Follow the advice of your former supporters. Leave this government, vote no confidence in this government.
Deputy Michael Collins.
Thanks very much.
A minute and a half.
Cora, to be honest with you, in 10 years since I came into the Dáil, I've never seen such a shambolic disgrace of a government across the way. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Every one of you. You haven't the decency. Don't you be saying anything to me. You ruined fisheries. And you're there singing and chanting as you were a great man. I gave you your time to talk and I didn't interfere. I didn't interfere. I didn't interfere. I travelled the country to drive me please here. We wrote to the Taoiseach. We wrote...
Just wait for a minute.
Sorry. I hope
you'll have your chance to speak.
Yeah, I never interfered with that.
And please, you've been asked.
The clock is, please.
Sorry, your time will, the clock can start again. But I won't tolerate it. And the ministers in particular should be given good example.
I travelled to a meeting in Portlaoise up to 20 days ago. They wrote to the Taoiseach. They wrote to every one of me. Not just the Taoiseach, the Tánaiste. To make sure there'll be no protest, sit down, have dialogue and see can we come to a solution for the hauliers and for different sectors out there. He turned your back on them. We asked for a reconvening in the Dáil. He turned your back on us there. So there was no way the people of Ireland could express the concerns. Today you've lost a minister. Today you've lost 2 TDs at least. If there's another independent out there, there's another minister over there that said, I'll bring the army in and we'll break up your vehicles. Good God Almighty, what in the name of God is the state are we living in? Are you there for the people? Who elected you? Sean Kenny? Minister Kenny, show your faces and stand up here with the people that elected you. Your people are ringing me, telling me to ask you that. That's the crisis we're in. That's the crisis you've left us in. And you should stand with your fellow independent that made that decision a while ago. It was a disgraceful carry on. The Taoiseach said, debate, talk to the people earlier. He wouldn't talk to no one. He said, we're giving the most because you're taking the most, 65% in the fuel that you're taking. Parliamentary democracy. There was no democracy because he wouldn't come back. He wouldn't speak to the people. Sinn Féin had said, oh yeah, they voted in for a vote of no confidence before the package. Sure, then goddamn it, hell, he wouldn't speak to the people. What choice do we have?
Thanks.
We're in the crisis we're in. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Lachlan Corla. The Taoiseach and Tánaiste have left the chamber, but they've also left the people of Ireland with the arrogance and the disgust that they showed against the real working people of Ireland. I've been accused of standing on a picket with the people of Ireland. I'm guilty. But I stood there and negotiated with them to make sure that there was nobody affected. The waterways were not affected. The farmers were not affected. The fuel was not affected because we went down and met them with their concerns and we actually worked with them. I've met the finest people and I have friends for life. And if I had to do it all over again tomorrow, I'll be with them because they're the real people of Ireland. They were from Clare, from Kerry, from Tipperary, from Cork and from Limerick. And we finished up below 1 o'clock and we said we walk out peacefully. What did they sing? Sean South from Garryowen. There wasn't one dry eye there because they were real people. Children from 2 years of age. I met men and women, the strongest people I've ever known, have never wanted for anything, crying to say that there's no future. That's what I stand for. And if I'm guilty of that, well, so be it. But I'll do the same thing tomorrow and the day after. And they said, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they said, the pen is mightier than the store. And Timmy Doolittle, you were mentioned at the protest. You'll be gone the next time, and you'll never again return.
Thank you very much, Last Count. Last count, this government has left down those in Blantyre. It has left down those farmers. It has left down taxi drivers. It has left down the hauliers. It has left down contractors and fishermen. And it has left down the ordinary people that this government say they represent and that they say they live amongst. The reality is they've blamed Trump for absolutely everything. We've heard government get up and stand about Trump. Donald Trump isn't in charge of NORA. He's not in charge of the carbon tax in this country. He's not in charge of that in this country. And he's not in charge of excise. What did Sean Kenny do? He said, go out and walk or go out and cycle. What did big James Bond himself go out and do? He said, we'll turn the army on our own citizens, which is reminiscent of something that you would hear in South America. It is reminiscent of a Pyrrhonist. And then we have the man that turned away from the woman in Kentucky not so long ago, but during this election and we didn't want to hear. And all of a sudden, he's gaslighting the country, saying he's concerned. He's concerned about the 900,000 people on waiting lists. All of a sudden, he's concerned about the 60,000 people on housing lists. He's concerned about the 116,000 people that are waiting for HAP. That's what this government is concerned about. You're concerned about nothing, only serving yourselves. And I applaud Deputy Healy-Rae, and I say well done to him for having a bit of backbone. And if those that turned up at the protests down in Whitegate or anywhere else in the country, in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, that turned up there and said, we're with you lads, and we're going to get rid of Micheál in a couple of weeks. If any of you have any bit of backbone, join with Healy-Rae and vote against this government, and let's call the election. Thank you.
The night that the first measures were announced here, a blind man would know that when you could buy white diesel within 3 cents of green diesel, the writing was on the wall. I done a speech in here, but no one would listen. The usual stuff. Don't even be on your phones. Don't listen to someone that comes from the sector. I have those black hands all my life, with grease, with oil. I know what it is to be an agricultural contractor. And you turn round and your civil servants and the people in here thought they knew more. To pay 170 for green diesel, when you're missing costs to cut a medal, the price of a house in Dublin, the financial pressure that's on those contractors. But no, we won't listen. The IFA warned you a week before it. The dog on the street knew there was discontent. What was the difference in bringing measures in the Sunday before to try and solve this? But no, we won't listen to the people that elected us. I never in my life, and I've been here for a lot of debates, I never in my life got more emails of people disgusted. And you know what? I went up to the people in Galway, people that voted for ye every time, for Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil. They voted for you, decent people, and let no one say that those people are far right either.
Fianna Fáil government and the Fine Gael government is a government of chaos. You have done more damage to fuel prices in this country than the war in Iran. Micheál Martin and Simon Harris's intransigence has actually brought this country to a standstill. Your stubbornness has seen petrol pumps run dry for the first time since the 1980s, and I have never seen as much political stress on the streets since the Right to Water protests. And don't forget this, your democratic authority comes from the citizens you refused to discuss and converse with last week. There's a too long in government arrogance in your government at the moment, and it's pulling down the shutters between yourselves and the people. And the fact that you escalated the protests last week is unbelievable, with threats of physical force from Gardaí and from the army as well. And the fact that you've kept blackening the names of those protesters since. And I think it's incredible that we've had Patrick O'Donovan, the minister, threaten press freedom in this country, probably since the first time since Eoin O'Duffy himself. It's incredible. The government is giving out about the protesters closing down businesses. These are the businesses that you were closing down that were actually protesting as well. And there's another issue here. You talk about people not being able to make hospital appointments. There's 1 million people on hospital waiting lists at the moment. There are a dozen children on scoliosis lists across the country at the moment that can't get operations. Some of them have lost lives because of the decisions that you have made.
First of all, it is absolutely astounding that you refuse to meet the protesters, but yet you are so quick to blacken their name. In fact, every single intervention that this government gave over the past number of days has been to add fuel to the fire. You threatened the army, you threatened the public order unit, you threatened to revoke licences, and you even accused the minister of being far right. That is not leadership. That is provocation, and it is deeply wrong. And you even called in the army without even engaging with your Fine Gael colleague. And now you are threatening an investigation in the media for daring to even cover this protest. And let me be very clear. This is the policy of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the ghost of the Green Party, to drive up fuel. It is
incremental increase after increase in relation to the carbon tax. And Minister Alan Dillon last week, just a few days ago, when businesses were on their knees, outlined to the Mayo media that he was going to increase carbon tax again on the 1st of May. A modest increase is what you said. When the people were struggling, you should be listening to the people. You should be engaging with the people, and you should not be blackening their name.
Deputy Gorbachev.
It's no surprise to hear me say that I won't be voting confidence in this government. As I said just after the election, your programme for government and the groups it deals with to keep you empowered didn't inspire any confidence or show any vision. Your choices during the last budget favoured wealthy developers, left vulnerable people in the lurch, and your lack of urgency on the need to ramp up our energy security has been frustrating. People in my constituency can't get affordable homes, and those that do are consigned to congested areas with no facilities, no infrastructure, no reliable public transport services, and many of them now fighting for basic parking spaces. I said a few weeks ago that more was needed to help people suffering to an even greater extent during the current cost of living and fuel crisis caused by Trump and Netanyahu. We know you didn't cause the problem, but you needed to listen to the people faster and be part of rapid, meaningful, short-term solutions. If you survive this vote, I'll comment on some of the wider issues in later debates. But I just want to put these views in the record in a respectful way. Tánaiste, you and your colleagues are not the devil, and the opposition are no angels. But to be clear, you've not responded quickly enough or gone far enough.
Minister Jim O'Callaghan.
Thank you very much, the fact that I follow on from Independent Ireland to speak here today, because I want to mention a group of Irish people, Irish men and women, that I never once mentioned about. And that's the men and women of An Garda Síochána who stood by this state. And I want to thank the Gardaí who over the past week showed outstanding professionalism, commitment and courage in guaranteeing the safety and security of the state and its citizens throughout the period of blockades of critical infrastructure. We all know in this House, on the government side, that in any liberal democracy, the right to peaceful assembly, the right to express disagreement with the people who govern is a central right. It's a right that all of us in this House support, and the Constitution of this country expressly guarantees it. I've no doubt that there are many people from across the country who are exercising that right due to the great concern they had for their livelihoods, and that's to be respected. Government has now acted to seek to address those concerns. However, let's get one thing straight in this House. The right to protest is not unlimited. Our Constitution states the right of citizens to assemble peaceably is subject to public order. What we witnessed last week at certain sites where the blockading of fuel and goods occurred was not a peaceful assembly in line with public order. In those circumstances, the Gardaí were required to restore order. That is what they did, and I commend them for doing so. It is a credit to the Gardaí that they not only managed to remove the blockades at both ports and fuel depots in a swift manner, following a number of days of engagement, they did so without any notable injury to the individuals at the blockades or any member of the force. I also want to commend the Defence Forces who provided assistance to the Gardaí in the provision of equipment required to remove vehicles forming parts of the blockade. An Garda Síochána, as you should appreciate, has a proud record and history of defending and securing the people of Ireland and their democratic institutions from harm against those who have tried to undermine them. They did so again on this occasion, and that's to be commended by everyone in this House. I'm concerned, however, about the unacceptable levels of hatred and vitriol directed at Garda members, sometimes in person, but mostly from faceless cowards on social media, the majority of them from outside this state. I want to put on the record of the House that harassment of members of An Garda Síochána online or in person will not be tolerated. I've already spoken to the Commissioner about this. He's assured me that where offences have been committed, prosecutions will follow. The work of this government in the area of justice has just begun, Count Corla. It's vital that work continues. As such, I commend the motion of confidence before the House.
No apologies for threatening the army.
Minister Peter Burke.
Listen,
Minister Peter.
you should recognise and respect our army.
Minister Burke.
You've respected another army for long enough.
Thank you.
Minister Burke.
Thank you, Count Corla. I rise to support the motion of confidence in this government and the accumulated package of €750 million of an intervention to support citizens right across our country. I do so while acknowledging the huge pressure that many families are on
families who play by the rules in our society, and that's why this intervention, together with the one a couple of weeks ago, is very significant. And when you look at the scale of it, for every fill of petrol for ordinary families up and down the country, for 60 litres of petrol, we're given €16 per fill. For diesel, we're given €19.20 per fill. And for contractors who use MGO, together with the intervention negotiated with my colleague, Minister Martin Hayden, we're bringing forward €55 for every fill of MGO for workers right across the economy. And also Minister Darragh O'Brien bringing forward a package of €40 million a week to support the supply chains, to ensure that groceries getting on the shelves for our workers are doing so with mitigating the increases of inflation. The bread, the milk that so many of our hauliers bring, that key mitigation factor. One thing I would say, there was huge disingenuous narratives being put forward over the last week and more, saying that government was profiting from this crisis. That is absolutely false, it's disingenuous and it's disgraceful and should not be allowed to take hold, considering the measures that we have introduced and we will further introduce. The final thing I would say, Last Count Corla, is actions have consequences. When someone brings forward a motion of no confidence in a government due to an unprecedented crisis in international limits that we've seen through the Iran shock, that we would leave a country, leave vulnerable citizens without a government, without the capacity to make key interventions to support our families right across the state. And we know one thing about that opposition is they cannot agree on anything. We brought forward a €250 million package here a few weeks ago, and the whole opposition could not support that. A simple €250 million package to support vulnerable families right across our country. It proves point time and time again that the opposition cannot agree on anything, but you want to tear down a government and leave the country without a government. And the key thing that shows this, the motion that Sinn Féin bring forward tonight, how do they solve a complex problem? Look at the one line in the motion, take maximum action necessary to reduce fuel prices. My God, what a shambles.
Exactly, that's what you are. That's what you are.
Minister Thomas Byrne.
sé seachna hin thuisiimar go léir san Eorp agus trasna an domhan do roireachán an nua agus drámata de búmi agus coga a bhí ag tarlas a bhean iarthar. De bhór seo tá taithí ag gach tír san Eorp le méideithe praosanna ulla mar réon le gantanis. Agus tá gachtainna bainteach le seo. Tá sé seo ag tarlú na míle ó seo ach tá éificht láithreach pobl na hÉireann, gnóna na hÉireann agus tealaigh na hÉireann. Agus mar ara gnóthaí Eorpacha tá is agamsa ó bheith caint le mo cóghlacathe Eorpaigh nach bhfuil éire leithí féin sa gghearcéim seo. Ach san Aontas Eorpach tá an pacáiste is cuimsithe is mó de takeíocht airgeadais fáil in éireann ná mar atá in aon tír sa Eorp. Chun cabhar a thabhairt de tealaigh éireannig agus gnóna éireannig daileáil leis an gghearcéim seo. Seo an pacáiste is suntasaí, is cuimsithe, is mó san Eorp. Má éiríonn le rún hin féin, ní bheidh deis ag an dáil an pacáiste seo a chuir bain. Buchas a dtí agus buchas leis an munracht is déan leachas an tír seo. Chonacamar an teachtain seo san Ungar, an bua Viktor Orbán na Ungára. Chuir seisean na polasa de Heis Independent Ireland Divine. Ag dul a ra agus iad gachar dhéanamh chun freagraí himplí a chóirt do muinte na tíre seo. Ach an damáiste rinne seisean don Ungar. Bheith ag tuairt na freagraí simplí sin. Is rogha é sin don tír seo. Rogha agus ag dearcha bheith agan, uaireanta bhfuil na feibanna seo anna dheacair daileáil le, agus go ceartún díospóireacht iomlána bheith agan sa dáil seo, agus idir an rialtas freisin, chunas gur féidir daileáil na feibanna na tíre seo. Is déan lá sa tír seo, agus bhálam sa freisin, éontu go thomláin, leis an ara ó agus Kurt, agus gachar rinne seisean na rinne seachtain sa caite.
Last Count Ceorla.
We are facing a global crisis in the supply and the cost of fuel. And this is the reality here in the chamber. The situation in Iran, it's unpredictable. Nobody knows. It's global. The government did introduce a package aimed at easing the impact of the cost of living increases, with cuts to excise on fuel and further supports for those to get their fuel allowance. This was only ever going to be the first package of supports, and I welcome the further packages announced by the government this week. The total package of over 750 million, the largest in the EU. This is the largest in the EU. Like, it just, I don't know, the government are really showing support there. They want to work with our hauliers, our farmers, our agriculture contractors and our bus operators. And I think it is important that people have certainty, particularly those involved in businesses and that are hardest hit. Now, I do know too that some are struggling. We all know that too. And I know some of my own constituency, Carlow Kilkenny, have come to me over the last few days about the cost of heating oil, and that is a concern. And that is why it was important to delay the increase in the carbon tax, and more supports are needed. I understand that. I spoke to my own colleague today, Minister Dara Calleary, and there is support for energy bills there through your local enterprise office, but you don't want to hear that. So why would you want people getting help and support? Why wouldn't you? As a minister in the Department of Health, there is real concerns. And I can say this because we had several meetings over the last week. We were working as well. We had several meetings. We had meetings with the department, and we've seen the impact.
Allow the minister to speak.
We had people waiting to go to hospital appointments, people that were waiting to go get their cancer treatment, and we were making sure that there was fuel to get nurses and carers to the homes that they needed to be. So this is about everybody working together. And as I said, unless we all work together to sort this, we need to help those most vulnerable people in Ireland, and it's all of us working together. But you, absolutely, we are working. And thank you, Cancora.
Deputy Maria Farrell. Deputy Maria Farrell. Hold on. Hold on. Just have some order, please. And I'd ask you to give the Speaker the chance to address the House. Yes, Deputy Farrell. Deputy Farrell, please.
People took to the streets in a way that we haven't seen before. People left their homes, they left their families, they left their livelihoods to stand up for themselves and for their communities, demanding a better Ireland. And how dare ye ignore the people again here today? You talk about Sinn Féin, but you don't talk about the people. It was the people that went out and said enough is enough. It was the people who had to take to the streets to demand action. And it was the people who said they have no confidence in you. But not one of you here spoke to the people here today. Instead, you spoke to and about yourselves. You have in no way heard the message that came from the people of Ireland, a message that they couldn't have given you any louder or any clearer. I had thought that coming in here today that maybe a little bit of humble pie had been eaten after the arrogance of last week. But no, I was completely mistaken. Nothing has changed. Because, of course, all of this happened because you refused to talk. You refused to engage, you refused to listen, and you refused to act. You refused to represent the people like they demanded that you represent them. When I thought about your disastrous response last week, I thought it couldn't get any worse. But the fact that you locked Galway representatives out of a meeting is absolutely shameful. Do you even realise how disrespectful that was? Do you understand the blind arrogance that you showed? It was like something out of a schoolyard. You were saying, well, I'll talk to those, but I won't talk to them. It was absolutely and utterly unbelievable. Now, I spoke to people in Galway. I spoke to people who were at the protest, and I spoke to other Galwegians who weren't at the protests, but who were vehemently supportive of the demands of the protesters. And all of those people said to me that it is time for this government to go. A government so immune to the realities of its people. And having spent time on these protests in Galway, I had perhaps thought that maybe a sense of clarity would have descended on this Dáil, a sense of clarity that the people had. But obviously this hasn't happened. Ye have doubled down. Ye have spent your time during this debate with your chests out and beating the same old drum of how great ye are, but the people are wise to ye. They know exactly what ye are at. They heard the words of the Taoiseach, the Tánaiste and the Minister for Justice last week, words which showed how out of touch ye are with the realities of people's lives, the contempt you show for the realities of people's lives, and you've shown a lack of awareness to the struggles of ordinary working people, these struggles that they face on a daily basis. But I tell you now, the people know whose side you're on, and they know that you are not on their side.
Michael Lowry.
I'm not going to shout, but I would like to be heard. This has been a very difficult week for the country and its citizens. People are suffering and under enormous financial pressure due to the cost of living increases in the price of fuel and due to the war in Iran. It has to be acknowledged that all of us across government failed to respond effectively in a timely fashion, failed to listen and understand the extent of people's worry and frustration. We all have encountered anger, resentment and outright hostility, which in my view arises from indecision, slow intervention and failure of communications. The protests started out with many aggrieved, hard-working, decent, respectable people who were worried sick about their future. It was later infiltrated by undesirables whose only agenda was to cripple the country and bring down the government. Over the past week as independents, we have used our influence for the introduction of specific financial supports for key sectors of the economy, such as haulage, distribution, logistics, school transport, bus operators, farmers and agricultural contractors. In particular, I am happy that sole traders in these sectors can access the support funds. Our independents, together with Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil backbenchers, battled strongly and successfully for a reduction in the government tax take on fuels and the deferment on the planned increase in carbon tax. This gives a measure of respite at the pumps for the general public who depend on fuel for their daily activity. While the country faces the most serious crisis in recent history, with oil supplies disrupted in the Middle East, energy markets in turmoil, there are those in our political system who shamefully are looking to exploit the situation for their own benefit rather than provide solutions to us to get through this dangerous time. Sinn Féin and others on the left have inflamed a very volatile situation. They wanted to cause the country further suffering in a pine-scoring exercise against the government. I want to say this today and put it on the record. Sinn Féin are the most hollow, cynical, destructive political imposters we have ever witnessed. Let me repeat, Sinn Féin are the most hollow, cynical and destructive political imposters I have ever, or this state has ever witnessed. While the government works for the Irish people, Sinn Féin uses their hardship as a political weapon. They seized on this moment because they have nothing else to offer, only contrived outrage. They are performers on a stage. They have proved time and time again they have no ability to govern, no ideas and no credibility. In a moment of global instability, in a moment...
Please. Deputy Lowry. Deputy Doherty, please.
In a moment of global instability, when we need responsibility, unity and a collective effort, they have chosen division, disruption and political opportunism. To bring down a government at a time like this would have far-reaching consequences for the Irish people. Legislation would stall, vital supports would be delayed, and the certainty that families and workers and businesses desperately need will be thrown into limbo. Disruption has been Sinn Féin's modus operandi from the very beginning of this government. From the day this coalition was formed, they sought to undermine and sabotage it for the sake of their own political advantage. They are a group of people who would rather see others fail than build something positive themselves. And then, of course, from Sinn Féin, we had the usual. They followed the usual social media hit lists. Politicians were named and targeted for the Sinn Féin army of online bots. They were directed to target, to pile on, and to encourage others to mount verbal assaults. Is this what you teach in Sinn Féin?
This is no way to act in a democracy. Again, I see this week Deputy Tobin dropped. Again this week, I see Deputy Tobin, who I have huge respect for, dropped the mask of pious virtue and showed his true colours. He egged on frustrated people to harass and intimidate and posted the names and numbers of representatives in our independent group. This form of intimidation is not acceptable in a democratic society. This is a time when Ireland needs this kind of toxic politics is doing real damage. It is discouraging thoughtful, talented young people from stepping forward to serve their communities. You are poisoning the well of potential candidates. This is a time when Ireland needs the best and brightest to help shape our future. So let me say today, as an elected representative, Deputy Lowry, you should conclude.
I have no confidence in Sinn Féin. I have no confidence in your ability to lead.
Deputy Lowry, please conclude.
I will be voting confidence in the government, confidence in our country, and confidence in our...
Resume your seat, Deputy Lowry. Deputy Lowry, resume your seat. Minister.
Ceann Comhairle. Today we stand here with respectful debate on behalf of the people that we represent at a time of maximum geopolitical uncertainty, and it's impacting globally and it's impacting our people, and we know that and we see that and we feel that because we are elected representatives in a small democratic state connected to our people. We know in Ireland together we're more impacted than so many others because of the small and deeply internationally interconnected nature of the very stable, very successful state that together everyone with everyone's perspective have built together. But it means two things now. We have to continue to protect that stable strength of our people, and we have to move to defend its weaknesses. We know that we have to keep our people's lights on without dependence from abroad and without the price shocks that we have seen from the actions of totally unpredictable players. The time, if it ever existed, for objecting, however politely, to the development of our infrastructure is now long gone. Energy security is central to the functioning of our society. We have seen that this week. And fortunately, we're a small island in the North Atlantic, so we can build it and we can build it well. We have built this state together on predictability and on stability and on consensus in our courts, in our social partnership and in our democracy. As Health Minister, I want to thank all of those who turned up to provide a stable and predictable health service for our patients in the face of real difficulty last week. Those who work in our healthcare face challenges turning up to work, doing their job, but they turned up. They kept clinics open longer for patients who themselves had difficulty getting there. They turned up for each other, and I thank them. I embrace protest as a public representative. In our democracy, I welcome protest. I will defend it. I will defend freedom of expression of all. These are parts of our constitutional politics. We fund civic society in this House in many ways to enable an even more vibrant civic debate. But when protest flips and when it steps across something else, to risking deliveries of chemotherapies in our hospitals as it did, to risking timely delivery of refrigerated medicines and blocks people getting to time-sensitive medical appointments like cancer treatments and dialysis. That isn't protest that we enable and embrace. That's something I don't believe that our very, very decent and very decent people and our very decent society wants us to make any part of this state. We may now have to face even bigger challenges ahead because of the continuing instability in the Middle East. We have to decide now to protect the strength and the stability that we have created together and protect ourselves from the type of crossing over of protest that we saw last week. When this is finished, we will all go back as ministers to our departments, well, except for Minister Healy-Rae, with whom I want to pay tribute for his contribution and hard work to the government and the independent group more broadly, but I know Minister Hayden will speak to that. But Minister Butler, Minister Murnane O'Connor, Minister Donnell and I will go back to the Department of Health to work on behalf of the people to expand capacity, improve access and support the people who are delivering our health service in all days, no matter what.
Minister Mary Butler.
We've heard a lot from Sinn Féin and Independent Ireland about ordinary, hard-working people. They say this government won't listen to hard-working people. They say this government has lost touch with hard-working people. They seem to think they have a monopoly on hard-working people. Well, I'm a hard-working person. I worked a counter and managed a family retail business for 17 years through good times and bad. My family are hard-working people. Since the day he started working shifts at the age of 16, my husband has worked on the ground for 44 years. I come from a community of hard-working people in Portlaw. I got into politics to represent ordinary, hard-working people. Last week, Sinn Féin and Independent Ireland shamefully blurred the lines between peaceful protest and illegal blockades. Peaceful protest is a cherished cornerstone of our democracy and always will be. One of the many rights we enjoy in a free society. Sinn Féin and other agitators on the opposition benches try to frame the illegal blockades of critical public infrastructure as a legitimate form of protest. Members of Independent Ireland use wardens to determine who got healthcare in Limerick Hospital. The REO, the Regional Executive Officer, Sandra Broderick of Limerick West, had to issue correspondence to politicians to allow people access to the hospital because they didn't have their appointment in the car. Last week, Sinn Féin publicly endorsed illegal blockades that infringed upon the fundamental rights of ordinary hard-working people in this country. Sinn Féin supported hard borders on this island of Ireland, the ultimate hypocrisy. These discriminatory blockades threatened fuel supplies. They threatened food security. They denied free movement and they denied access to healthcare for ordinary, hard-working citizens throughout this republic. I witnessed it firsthand as a minister. The illegal blockade supported by Sinn Féin and Independent Ireland meant ambulances had to determine, they had to triage who they answered to. Elderly people in West Clare, were denied home care. And I sat with a family whose 12 hours of support at the weekend for a child who was autistic, and their 12 hours were reduced because the people didn't have petrol in their car to visit. That's the reality of Independent Ireland and Sinn Féin.
I need to correct that, Minister.
She's right. Resume your seat. Deputy Collins, resume your seat. You'll be asked to leave the chamber, Deputy Collins. Deputy Collins, resume your seat.
They don't.
We want to listen to everyone, please. Please. And I'll ask you to please respect the speakers. Yeah, they listen to you. I'm asking you to listen to everyone that's making a contribution. This is a democracy, as you said. Minister Martin Hayden. Sorry? Okay, that's grand. Minister Hayden.
I want to start by saying I regret the decision of Michael Healy-Rae today. I want to acknowledge his role as Minister for Forestry and as a good colleague in the Department of Agriculture over the last 15 months. As a sector, we in agriculture face plenty of challenges. It is my job to fight for and defend agriculture in the best interests of our farmers, our fishers and our agri-food sector, and because of its importance to our overall economy, and in particular, our rural economy. I do this in my department and at Cabinet, and I do it with the support of my colleagues across government, because this government recognises the vital role that our farmers, our fishers, our foresters and our farm contractors play across Ireland. The vulnerability of our farmers and fishers to a massive energy shock has greatly concerned all. But with government support, our agri-food sector will endure. We grew up as young children on our farms being told that there would be no future in farming because of the impending Maastricht reforms of the early 1990s. But farming endured. We were told that the fishery reforms, greening, COVID, Brexit, and the high cost of inputs following the Ukrainian war were each going to be the end of the world for agriculture. However, farming endured and continued, and it will continue to do so into the future with the support of the government like it has in the past. We recognise the exceptional pressure that rising fuel costs are placing on our agri-food sector at such a crucial time of the year. I've heard it from friends, from neighbours, and in my ongoing engagements with representative bodies. Green diesel has almost doubled in price, from less than €1 per litre in a matter of weeks. right at a time when farmers and contractors are in the midst of the spring work and facing into a busy silage season. That is why this government has approved a substantial package of support. It includes the full removal of all non-carbon excise on green diesel, totaling 7.5 cents a litre, and a further support of 20 cents a litre through a €100 million fuel subsidy support scheme for farmers and farm contractors. This support of 27.4 cents a litre will be to the benefit of both farmers and contractors, recognising their central role in sustaining essential food production. But this is much more than about just one sector, Lascian Corla. It's about support for every citizen in the state, because when input costs rise, it puts pressure on the price and availability of food for all consumers. Energy shocks without support would lead to significant inflation, particularly food inflation, on which we all depend, and unchecked that would have a direct impact on the cost of living for all.
Thanks,
By supporting the agri-food sector and our haulers and all those reliant on fuel who play a role in getting food from farm to fork, we support everyone.
You should conclude.
So we have a choice here to make, Lascian Corla, as I conclude. Those in opposition can attempt to either dismiss or ignore these supports and try to prevent their introduction, or they can choose to engage with me and my department on their rollout to those who need them most. The choice is yours.
Minister
And I do know
O'Brien.
the bully boys in the corner never said a word when I was speaking, unlike their interventions when my female ministerial colleagues.
Minister O'Brien.
Firstly, I obviously want to support the motion of confidence in the government, but I want to commence my remarks by thanking the Gardaí, by thanking our bus drivers, by thanking the public sector, by thanking all the frontline workers who had to put up with a lot over the last week or so. I also want to recognise, and we know this, I'm a TD in Dublin, like all my colleagues on the government side, we know our constituents. We understand the difficulties that people have and the pressures that they're under. We also understand that this is a global crisis, that we're grappling with a global crisis here in Ireland that every other country in the world is. And I actually do despair today, again, to listen to some of the political discourse that has been a political pantomime. Now, what we have seen by some, not by all in the opposition, is them abrogating their responsibilities as TDs and legislators here. You have a responsibility to work together to help our people and our country through this unprecedented crisis. And on the 25th of March, when we brought the first package of measures forward, all of the opposition, with the exception of the main opposition party, voted against every excise cut that day. Voted against actual support. Been Bailey the Hustle.
There's no point of order, Deputy Doherty.
Neil McGage took lesson far and
Continue, Deputy O'Brien. There's no point of order. Deputy Minister O'Brien.
Thank you. I know what I would say. That's a fact. Check the record. Check the record.
No.
We put forward
There is no point of order.
that they voted against it, did not accept our
There is no point of order, Deputy Doherty.
That's why
Minister O'Brien. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to move on. Just in the interest of this. Now, what I've heard, that I'm not. What we've heard here from Pearson and others is an example of Sinn Féin's behaviour today. What we have heard, though, from some in those benches, not all, has been literally despicable. That what you've done is any time a female deputy stood up here or a minister, you shouted them down. And Ken O'Flynn, you have a look back at what you've done. And what I'm conscious of is the people outside, the very people that we all represent, who are really concerned about what's happening all the way across the world and in this country. Yes, how they pay their electricity bills. Yes, how they put food on the table. Will they keep their job? If they're looking in at this today, and by some of the behaviour, the misogynistic behaviour, the nasty, vicious language.
Please, Deputy.
Nasty,
Minister O'Brien.
Nasty.
Stop telling lies about me. I'll stop telling lies about
Nasty. Lascian Corla, if I may, I think.
Go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Lascian Corla. I think, look, none of us in government, and I hope none of you in opposition, fail to grasp the gravity of the global crisis that we're in. And it behoves all of us to do everything we can to protect our citizens and our businesses and the vulnerable as best we can. Are we going to be able to resolve every problem here in this country that is visited upon our citizens by 1 or 2 packages of financial support. No, we're not. But we're doing our level best to assist. And to be fair to some in the opposition, I listened to contributions from Labour, the Social Democrats and from others, Deputy Paul Gogarty. There were people who are actually really trying to put forward cases and ideas. And yes, you criticise government constructively, fine, or not. But then I look at the main opposition party. What did you actually bring forward? Minister Peter Burke mentioned one line: do everything you can on energy prices. Shinnameid. So the fact of the matter is, I would ask people, my final question is this evening we will have financial resolutions down to cut fuel bills, to bring forward measures like with the road hauliers, €40 million per month in support. And the question will be, it'll be on the Dáil record, of who is going to support that and who will actually vote for that. So last Count Corla, I would say, I think all I would say is, I'm not going to be shouted down by Pierce Stardy, he's a late bloomer to democracy. What I would say to you is, it is here.
Minister,
you look.
Deputy Doherty.
Look at him again.
Deputy Doherty.
Look at him.
Go ahead, Minister, finish.
We have very serious matters. We have very serious matters in this House. And measures to bring forward to support our people. And I would hope, and I would hope that those on the opposition side would discharge their responsibilities appropriately and stop trying to just consistently score political points. You couldn't care less about the people.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Is that agreed? Not agreed. Those in favour say Tá. Those against say Neil. I consider the question as carried. This will be a roll call vote. Yeah.
motion read the confidence in the government, and the question is that the motion be agreed to. And on that question, a division has been challenged pursuant to Standing Order 88.1. Tellers Thaw, Mary Butler and Emer Curry. Tellers Neil, Porrig McLaughlin and Duncan Smith. The clerk will now take a roll call vote. Please.
Deputy Tom Brownson. Deputy Shay Brennan. Mr. James Brown. Mr. Mary Butler. Deputy Martin Byrne. Mr. Thomas Byrne. Deputy Michael Campbell. Mr. Darrell Cleary. Mr. Jack Chambers. Deputy Peter Jack Clear. Mr. Niall Collins. Deputy John Conley. Deputy Conal Crowe. Deputy Martin Daly. Deputy Ashling Dempsey. Deputy Cormac Devlin. Deputy Albert Dolan. Minister Timmy Dooley. Deputy Sean Fleming. Minister Norma Foley. Deputy Patrick Cook Gallagher. Deputy John Mahart. Minister James Lawless. Ankisha. Deputy Home Cole. Minister Charlie McConnell. Deputy Tony Cormack. Deputy Seamus McGrath. Deputy Aaron McGreehan. Deputy John McGuinness. Deputy Andreas Moynihan. Minister Michael Moynihan. Deputy Shane Moynihan. Minister Jennifer Moran O'Connor. Deputy Nisha O'Carroll. Deputy Sean Farrelly. Minister Darrell O'Brien. Minister Jim O'Callaghan. Deputy James O'Connor. Deputy William D. Deputy Ryan O'Mara. Minister Christopher O'Sullivan. Deputy Corey O'Sullivan. Deputy Amy Scanlon. Deputy Brendan Smith. Minister Neil Smith. Minister Robert Troy. Deputy William Hurd. Deputy Grace Boland. Deputy Brian Brown. Mr. Colin Brophy. Deputy Colin Burke. Mr. Peter Burke. Deputy Paula Buttery. Minister Jerry Butler. Deputy Catherine Callahan. Deputy Neil Carrigan. Minister Jennifer Carr McNeil. Deputy John Fendane. Deputy Joe Cooney. Minister John Cummins. Deputy Emer Curry. Minister Alan Dillon. Mr. Frankie Phoenix. Deputy James Gagan. Tánaiste. Mr. Martin Hayden. Mr. Ian Higgins. Deputy Ciara Keogh. Deputy David Maxwell. Deputy Noel McCarthy. Mr. Helen McEntee. Deputy Michael Murphy. Minister Hildegard Martin. Deputy Joe Neville. Deputy Nisha O'Murray. Deputy Nate O'Connor. Mr. Kieran O'Donnell. Mr. Patrick O'Donovan. Deputy John Paul O'Shea. Mr. Neil Richmond. Deputy Pete Roach. Deputy Edward Timmins. Deputy Barry Ward. Mr. Sean Hannon. Mr. Noel Grealish. Mr. Marion Harkin. Mr. Kevin Buxton Moran.
Deputy Kathy Bennett. Neil. Deputy John Brady.
Neil.
Deputy Pat Buckley.
Neil.
Deputy Joanna Byrne.
Neil.
Deputy Matt Carthy.
Neil.
Deputy Serkan Clark.
Neil.
Deputy Rose Conley Walsh.
Neil.
Deputy Rada Cronin. Deputy Sean Crowe. Deputy David Cullinan.
Neil.
Deputy Paul Daly.
Neil.
Deputy Maura Devine.
Neil.
Deputy Pierce Doherty.
Neil.
Deputy Paul Donnelly.
Neil.
Deputy Desi Ellis. Deputy Maureen Farrell.
Neil.
Deputy Thomas Gould.
Neil.
Deputy Anne Graves. Deputy Johnny Burke. Deputy Martin Kenny.
Neil.
Deputy Claire Curran.
Neil.
Deputy Corey McLaughlin.
Neil.
Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald.
Neil.
Deputy Don McGetty.
Neil.
Deputy Conor Deanigan.
Neil.
Deputy Denise Mitchell.
Neil.
Deputy John Myler.
Neil.
Deputy Natasha Neeson Brown.
Neil.
Deputy Shoni Riley. Deputy Owen O'Brien.
Neil.
Deputy Donegal Laird.
Neil.
Deputy Rory Murphy.
Neil.
Deputy Amos Osmani.
Neil.
Deputy Franco Silverman.
Neil.
Deputy Louis Howard.
Neil.
Deputy Louise O'Reilly.
Neil.
Deputy Darren Rowe.
Neil.
Deputy Morris Quinlan.
Neil.
Deputy Mark Ward.
Neil.
Deputy Kieran Hearn.
Neil.
Deputy Van Dash.
Neil.
Deputy Alan Kelly.
Neil.
Deputy Owen Kenny.
Neil.
Deputy George Lawler.
Neil.
Deputy Dave Nash.
Neil.
Deputy Robert O'Donoghue.
Neil.
Deputy Conor Sheehan.
Neil.
Deputy Lee Sherlock.
Neil.
Deputy Jonathan Smith. Deputy Mark Wall.
Neil.
Deputy Holly Kearns. Deputy Jane Cummins. Deputy Aidan Farrell. Deputy Gary Gann. Deputy Sinead Gillen. Deputy Owen Hayes.
Neil.
Deputy Roy Hearn.
Neil.
Deputy Keane O'Callaghan.
Neil.
Deputy Ian Craig.
Neil.
Deputy Sarah Ross.
Neil.
Deputy Jennifer Whitmore.
Neil.
Deputy Richard Gore Parrish.
Neil.
Deputy Ruth Cottinger.
Neil.
Deputy James Ely. Deputy Paul Murphy.
Neil.
Deputy Robert O'Gorman.
Neil.
Deputy Brian Stanley.
Neil.
Deputy Charles Ward.
Neil.
Deputy Michael Collins.
Neil.
Deputy Paul Nicholas Goldie.
Neil.
Deputy Michael Morris.
Neil.
Deputy Paul Laws.
Neil.
Deputy Richard O'Donoghue.
Neil.
Deputy Kenneth Flynn.
Neil.
Deputy Carol Julian.
Neil.
Deputy Danny Healy Ray.
Neil. Neil.
Deputy Michael Healy Ray.
Neil.
Deputy Barry Heenan.
Oh.
Deputy Michael Barry. Deputy Matthew McGrath. Deputy Carol Nolan. Deputy Gillian True.
I think we need to count because there's no one missing.
Deputies Thaw 92, Deputies Neal 78. The question is carried. Now, if deputies wish to leave, I'm moving to the next item.
Bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street. There's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. You've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
You be proud, guards. Guards. If I rang for a guard, you wouldn't come for fucking 2 days. We were robbed several times to ring for a guard. There are the guards to be got in this country. And here you are now, putting those fucking working men on the ground. You fuck off home and get a better job for yourself. I need your fucking wages.
So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I want you to get up right now. Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do about the depression and the inflation and the oil crisis. But first, get up out of your chairs, open the window, stick your head out and yell and say, I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore. You've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.